Good afternoon and welcome back to the SPL on this wonderful Thursday afternoon. We've just got done with a very good series. I was going to try and hide the result, but there's no reason to because I'm about to show standings in a minute. Dignitas just lost to Obey 3-2. We went all 5 games. Who would have thunk it? To talk about this set we're about to bring you though, he's going to be joining me on the desk, the one and only, the man mountain himself. It's Aggro Ryan Bailey.
Don't think that's ever been used to describe me before, but I'll take it, I suppose.
I think production said they didn't like that, so I can't do that again. I'm sorry.
That's fine. If Tyler didn't like it, I didn't like it either. That's the thing.
Sad music on too, though. Because of that, he's upset.
Yeah, well.
You can always tell by Tyler's music choices how things are in the world there. Let's have a look at the standings after today's early game set. We had a chance to look at good old Obey and Dignitas, and would you believe it, Obey won that set and climb off the bottom 2.
From the 2nd seed to the 9th seed, Obey at the 9 ends up moving up to 8 because of it, and Dignitas drop out of 2nd place and give it up to Pittsburgh Knights, who just made a roster change.
And imagine if Knights make top 2. Rogue steps in and just they blow through to the number 2 seed, which they got an easier seed at Worlds. That's crazy.
They might.
That's how wild the thing is, and that's why we mentioned that PK. Obviously, you saw a little bit of that. They've got another longer video coming out soon. But for now, it's time to turn our attention towards Splyce and SK Gaming. Both teams with something to prove to an extent. Splyce have qualified for the World Championships technically. They're in a bit of a battle, but I still leaning that way.
Not yet. They're certainly favored to, but this matchup in particular is very, very important for them because they are the 6th seed. That's the cutoff. Right now, it's top 6 go immediately to Worlds. This SK team, number 7. So this is the bubble team. This is the bubble matchup. SK can do themselves an awful lot of favors by winning this set today.
Well, that man on your screen, a very important factor for Splyce. We got a chance to catch up with him before this set. Let's have a listen into what he had to say.
In terms of where we're at right now, it's really hard to say because there's just so many different variables this year. Like, there's so many different things that we all moved down here. Every single team moved here besides one team, basically. The teams are all different, including my team, myself. There's not 2 regions anymore. Both players are all in the same region playing. So it's just different. Like, it's really hard to gauge like where we were at last year compared to right now, like at the same time. I don't know, it's just so different that it's impossible to say for me, but I feel like we're in a pretty good spot, and as long as we keep practicing and we don't give up on that, and as long as we keep studying the game and just watching other teams play and just trying to take as much as we can from every other team in the league as well, I mean, we're just gonna keep getting better and better. I mean, better seeding is always better for the most part. I mean, I don't think anybody would ever argue that being a lower seed is better. There are some circumstances sometimes that it can be better, but most of the time being a higher seed usually puts you in a better spot. But to me, I mean, at the end of the day, if we make it to Worlds, I feel like as long as we keep improving and getting better, we'll put ourselves in a good spot. But like right now, I don't really care about that because we haven't even qualified yet, and the only thing that matters is just winning against SK right now. And like as long as we're focused on that, I mean I'll be happy. But Worlds doesn't mean anything right now because it's not right now. So. SK is a hard team to read. They have some pretty interesting players. Like Zap is super consistent, I feel like, and he's played pretty well all year. The rest of the team is hit or miss usually, but they all can be really good. Obviously last year at Worlds they stuck together. They had a really good spout where they all played really well. So we've just been preparing like every other team, looking at their games, looking at things they like to do, trying to see what patterns they like, and just playing our own game and just keep improving that aspect of it. And we feel like we've been getting better and better, which is a good thing.
Well, the one thing I see from both that team overall is their spirit of this team is definitely there. I like that in teams. You don't always see it with all of them. Rival have a bit of that team spirit going on. Splyce is definitely another one of those. From experience over the years, the teams with the better spirit and camaraderie amongst them are the ones that generally go further.
It is true, and they've got to contest against an SK team that I think is difficult to prepare for. It's a team that does a lot of different things. It's usually fairly aggressive in the early game, but then as of late, they've been slowing down their pace a lot.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell exactly what you're going to get with SK. it's just going to be something fun to watch.
Neil Maher going to be an important factor for that too. He was on Roll Queue just recently. If you've not seen it yet, check out the Roll Queue where he talks a little bit about his unconventional picks. This pick, though, pretty standard with Khepri being in the meta these days. You're hoping for some defensive plays out of him. I will say the one thing that does happen with teams, Ryan, as we watch some of these plays from Neil Maher, is that when the people identify them and the casters and the fans are talking about the issues that they see, teams start to try and adapt to them. And sometimes that can come at a negative sometimes because they're so focused on adjusting the issues that others are seeing, they forget about where their strengths were. And I think SK have lost a bit of their edge in the early games while they've been focusing towards the mid-later stages because they recognize it's been an issue.
It has been, but I think that overall, if they can get to the point where they're going to get to a healthier spot as a team, to get to the point where they can actually contest with the top end, because this is a team that looks really good at times. You know, they force Renegades into a bunch of really, really long games, and you think, wow, this team might have really turned the corner. And then, you know, they have a couple games where you're like, oh, no, this is SK still. They need to change something, and whether that was taking their foot off the gas in the early game and changing it to the late game, I don't know, but they've got to do something.
Did see a lot of Paul as well last time I saw them play with that AMC in the mid lane. Had some fantastic performances there.
Yep.
Wonder if I'll get a chance to do that now, or is AMC slipping away with how the meta's been changing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really the big nerf that he took. I mean, no longer proccing Mage's Blessing on the bees, no longer having that big burst potential off Stinger right at level 5. The base damage nerf there really does hurt him. I wouldn't be surprised if we still see AMC, but maybe not top pick, top ban anymore.
Wonder if we're going to see another Persephone today. I'm sure Splyce and SK definitely watched that last set, and I'm pretty sure SK will take it if it's available. Splyce may need to look into taking that for themselves.
Doesn't feel like a Zapman god, but certainly feels like a Paul god. I mean, that seems like a god that SK would really, really like to get first overall here. They're going to leave it open. They focus out Ven's god pool a little bit and what we might see out of Cyclone Spin, but Splyce has a lot of things open now, and they're going to get 2 out of 3 of Persephone, Set, and Isis if they can. Now they're going to get one
Persephone.
I think you go Persephone.
Really?
Yeah, I think
over
so.
Set?
Do you want to give Cyclone Spin what might a new god that you don't really know how to fight against?
Do you want to give Cyclone Spin Set?
Yes. I'd much.
Really?
I'd rather give Solo. It's probably going to be Solo Retrol on the Set.
Oh.
I think it'll be Solo Retrol on the Set.
I'm already excited for this game.
I'd rather give him Set than give Cyclone Persephone.
This got more interesting already with the fact Persephone and Set both up. Amaterasu, first of all, she's going to rise heavily into play. Bit of a buff towards the ultimate, but also her dash is a little bit safer.
Huge deal. Huge deal for her for sure, and I agree that we're going to see a lot of her. Wonder if it's going to be Solo right away.
No Set.
No Set pickup here by
Is
Splyce.
that a drop mistake there? Is that a mistake by Splyce?
I don't think so. I think both these picks are pretty strong, and you got to see what SK is going to pull out. Maybe, I mean, you know that SK, when they pick Set, it goes to Belair in the short lane. Maybe that's a matchup where Solo Retrol, you pick Amaterasu, and you just kind of sit under tower and wait, and you feel like you can make big plays with it. It's clearly a plan by Splyce. A little surprised by this Hunbat's pick early on. Feels like SK don't have something that they really want to prioritize very heavily, and this is just a pretty safe pick for them.
Not gonna lie though, SK's come so far very squishy. It's a heavy comp that can be shut down by CC.
Yep.
Obviously, Persephone will survive after death if she's got a passive available to her. And CC's the name of the game for Splyce so far. Amaterasu, Thor, and now the Hercules.
Not bad for Splyce. I mean, these are 3 very, very strong picks. You can get Cyclone's pick a little bit later. You can get Ven's pick a little bit later. I really like these first 3 picks for Splyce. Wouldn't be surprised to see SK now focus Ven out even more. They already put a lot of bans into him with the On Her and the AMC. So now you're looking at Chiron as a big ban, I think. That's the first one that I would be taking off the board. And then maybe Ho Yi, that's something Cyclone Spin's played a lot.
Giannis. I know Giannis isn't great competitively as a whole in terms of mid lane, but Giannis for the mobility for this Splyce roster to get in and out of combat and maybe close the gap and get away from SK could be options.
Could be, but we just haven't seen it in so long from Splyce and from Ven in particular. I think it's much safer to go with the bans that you know.
Been waiting for the Neef to start to rise. We'll see how she does this game. And flexible too, towards the mid lane or the duo lane. If it's going to be set in the solo lane, then you're not as worried, I guess, of the set. But Fenrir into play.
Interesting. This is for Neil Ma, and this is the ability to chase around this Thor in the early game. Thor wants to get spin at level 1 these days, not the hammer, and so it makes it really easy to harass him with that Fenrir Brutalize. I like...
Ooh!
What's up?
Nubis and Neef?
This is a Cyclone Spin pick. I mean, this is
Anubis
the
duo, right? That's what we're
leave
talking
me
about
on the
here.
island and let me one-shot people. Interesting from Splyce. We'll see if it pays off. I mean, Persephone Anubis, a matchup I did not think we would see today.
Amaterasu solo lane, is that the case here for solo or troll then?
Yes, yeah, I think so for sure. I mean, Aurora is not giving up that Hercules. There's no way you're giving that up. Solo or troll playing the Amaterasu. I wonder if that's it must be a matchup that he's pretty confident in against the set, because you know SK is going to take it if you leave it open.
This is a great Thursday. Can I just say that this is probably the best Thursday I've seen in the SPL this year, just because
fun.
we're getting upsets, wild picks, and we're on the cusp of World Championships too. What a time to have all this start to happen. SK versus Splyce. We get some weird picks. I'm excited to see how Persephone does, but how's Anubis going to do? John Finch, Tolly, tell me all about it.
I'd be happy to. That was a real long throw. SK versus Splyce as we start game number 1. It's Finch and Anatoly as we move into the action. And just like Hindu Man took all day to say, there's some interesting picks here on the side from Splyce. They give up both the set and the Persephone to SK so they can prioritize Neath and Anubis.
I mean, I guess so. Global Pressure's not bad, right? World
Right,
Weaver
yeah.
on top of the Anvil of Dawn. I like that idea. Focus out Paul maybe potentially on the Persephone with those globals. We saw the epic crash and burn from Obey trying to kill Heroine's Persephone under this very dual lane tier 1 tower. And because of that, they lost the game. He revived with his passive having over 25 seeds, and then he was still making the impact with the team fight.
Well, you can see the Bancross Talon rush for Paul, not the long lane Persephone. This Persephone will be right in the thick of things from the beginning of the match. Neil coming in for the steal, but does not get there in time. Didn't mean to rhyme. And Scream makes it back out of there with the speed buff. But this Persephone middle with the Bancross rush, you heard Ryan talking about all the synergy here with Persephone. This could be very strong, but Aurora, having some presence early, doesn't find it.
And I'm more surprised that Cyclone Spin is not going the Bancroft's rush, especially on Anubis, by the way. Can we talk about Anubis? Like, we're all talking about Persephone. Sure, that's the new god. Every new god is going to be played in the first week that it's allowed in the SPL. But Cyclone Spin not going for Bancroft's Talon means that it takes him a little bit longer to clear out this wave and not looking for the purple buff invade despite having all this pressure.
That's right. He was able to clear out a little bit ahead of Zapman here this time, but allow Zap to go back to his purple, and Cyclone will just stick to his own. This is a bit different. It's weird. This is in line with how other mages would build here in the long lane, with going with a little bit of a defensive, more defensive start and being a little bit tankier, but not what you would have expected from an Anubis. He does so much with all that extra lifesteal and burning it down.
And that's his identity. It's kill or be killed at the end of the day because of all that lifesteal. His heavy base damage, his great scaling on top of it. Cyclone's been a very accurate top 3 mechanical gifted players like Cyclone, Baskin, and Adapting. You know, mix and match at any given day of what your top 3 player is. And that's why I'm surprised he's not going for a full glass cannon build.
But I think you can get to 3rd place becoming really good at someone else's strategy, but you just can't get to 1st that way. You have to play your own game. You have to be that innovator. That's what we always see at Worlds every time. The team that's ahead of the meta is the one that wins. And Cyclone Spin showing us here with this Anubis, he's willing to do his own thing and play his own picks. As Splyce splitting a bit differently from SK here in the middle, Paul getting a good amount of time to himself.
He definitely has been, and that's good to try to get those levels on your mage. Zatman's still going to do Jingwei things regardless if he's level 12 versus if he's level 14, but that level disparity of Persephone, or any mage for that matter, goes the distance, especially when you're not really getting contested in the early game.
This is what Anubis can do, as Zatman almost willingly chooses to stay inside the damage, perhaps knowing it wasn't going to quite be enough here from this Anubis, but he only needs a bit with that Mummify to really claim your life. Zatman even holds onto the beads.
If that was Bancroft's or tier 2 talent trinket, I think Zatman dies there, or at least he has the agility way much faster.
Oh yeah, has to use beads there. Maybe that's part of why Zap is brave enough to stay.
But either way, though, Cyclone Spin is going to transition in a safe manner. He might be a little bit worried about some of the ganks potentially coming through from Sanford Soccer on the Hunbats, maybe Nilma onto this Fenrir. We're going to need to see some wards from Cyclone Spin's team on that left side of the map.
If they do want to have some more active ganks over there. We spent a lot of time talking about this Anubis, about this Persephone, but there's still some old school gods I think are going to have a big impact on this match, particularly Sam on this Unbots. Fear no evil, if he's forcing out relics there, look at how much that opens up for the rest of this team, for Neomall with the Ragnarok, for Paul with his ultimate as well on this Persephone. Those are such big tools if you don't have CC immunity.
I definitely agree, and that could be a baiting tactic that Splyce are going to try to do, is bait out Neil in a sticky situation with the Ragnarok, which is what led me to believe that Cyclone Spin favored this Anubis pick. Allow himself to get jumped on and then turn that around with the Death Gaze, right? Like, you have a very high, or large rather, hitbox when you are in the Ragnarok form. Hard to miss Death Gaze.
That's right. I mean, I don't know how much Anubis cares if you root him with that Persephone ult. He's going to do that anyway with his own ult, right? He's fine planting his flag. So maybe that is somewhat the idea, is that you pick someone who isn't trying to be mobile anyway. But Sam has snuck up on Cyclone Spin. He can only hope to turn and burn immediately to the Mummify, into the Death Gaze, but that's first blood for SK off a Sam for Soccer rotation.
A good ward from SK Gaming. I thought for a moment that was Splyce's ward, but not to be the case there. Good juke from Belair, sandstorming away from that third strike of that ultimate, which would have been a 2-second stun. Could have gave a window for SOT to get the solo kill.
Instead, Solo Control just have to hang back for a minute. Amaterasu against Warriors usually has to wait. It looks like it's the same case against the set as Aurora bullies Neil. That's the leap down, but Neil's going to have backup in the form of Paul, so I don't know how much more Aurora can stick around.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be here. Have health against a level 4 Hercules, but this is a bait now because Belair is going to make the pincer maneuver. Still difficult to kill, though, with the mitigate wounds. You already finished off the Talaria boots. You have plenty of mobility. Still need about a couple of stacks there to finish off that Guardian's Blessing.
Oh, that's right. We buy those again.
Yes.
Apparently Guardians and Assassins are things you buy.
Unless you're Obey Alliance.
I mean, they won. I can't give them a hard time, right? I mean, so it worked out.
Here's a new video for Weekend. It's going to be beating Team Dignitas without a blessing, question mark, exclamation point.
And I'm going to click on it, too. I won't have any choice. I'll have to watch it. That's great. There totally is. We are going back to basics here on the side of Splyce. Talaria Boots and Guardian's Blessing, a great start for this Hercules to get him around the map. Aside from that gank on left, though, this has been a relatively quiet game. There haven't even been a bunch of gank attempts.
What's so interesting about these two teams, Finch, is how close they are towards their own identity. And how they're like a Venn diagram, right? But that Venn diagram is like more middle portion.
It's almost a circle.
Yeah, it's like very close to being a full circle because Neil and Aurora are going for less than traditional picks in the Guardian roles. Paul and Venenu likes to go for Hunters from time to time, but
they're all in.
Persephone a little bit different as a result.
They committed the ult to the Anvil of Dawn and then World Weaver from Neath, and they didn't really find much on the Sam. It's a good choice. He doesn't have any beads. He's on this blink, so he can initiate, but they aren't able to find it.
And that's something that he's going to need to lean on, is this blink engagements from Sam. Maybe on one of the side lanes. I wouldn't be surprised if he leans on maybe even SOT. Cyclone Spin's damage is only going to increase if you're not careful.
That's exactly right. He did take a bit of a spill early on, but hasn't appeared to slow him down too much. I'll talk a little bit more here about this Persephone. We can kind of see her plants around the map, and for the most part, she has those seeds aggressively planted up in front of that tier 1 where Venenu is, so he's got to pick his spots very carefully. I imagine we'll be able to get a good idea of where SK plan to go if Paul takes some time to plant a few seeds around Gold or Pyro or something like that.
Now, it's not much right now, but I'm looking at the net worth between Paul and Venenu. That 100 gold differential is not really coming from the Totem of Ku. It's coming from that passive.
Right.
When you go back to the fountain after having more than 25 seeds, each seed accessing past 25 gives you 3 gold.
Neomar Ragnarok onto Aurora, brings it back into the Fear No Evil, and the seed chain proves to be too strong. That was Paul from way downtown, by the way, because that ultimate keeps going until it hits something. A nice pick for SK.
Just leaving behind a little landmark saying like, yeah, I would have gotten the kill either way. As SK onto a great start. Splyce is the team that most have favored, but we saw what happened to the more favored team in the previous set.
That's right. It didn't seem to matter much there being ahead in the standings, so you got to win your game games on the battlefield. And usually it's Splyce that get off to these kind of explosive starts, but this game it's been SK.
That's true, because normally it's off of Aurora.
But like you said, SK plays the same way. You're exactly right.
So, but even then, like when you're looking at the difference of these two teams in the standings, they're not that far separated. Splyce at 8 and 5 between the two faces. SK at 6 and 8. SK are still eligible to make it to Worlds. Skipping through that placement rounds is if they can win out, they would end at 10 and 8. And that would be the magic number. But the 3 teams that are in the running for that 6th spot is SK, it's Splyce, and it's even still Renegades.
That's right. There's some strong teams down there because of how the Phase 1 starts went. That all still carries on. So this is a big set for SK in terms of making it towards LAN. They wouldn't be out of it per se if they dropped this set, but it is so much harder. They would really prefer to win out, I think, if they want to keep their chances comfortable.
Yeah, if they lose this set, then they can only really get over Renegades if they lose out.
Some aggression onto Aurora. You can tell by his low HP. He's had to fall back already, and this is so different from how we normally see Splyce getting to play this early game. Aurora's usually the one setting up buff invades. He's usually harassing the enemy jungler, but Sam for Soccer has a small lead here over Scream this time, and Aurora's been relatively quiet except for his one death. Now we'll get to see a little bit of Splyce winning their games heads up, because it won't be off a nice early lead.
And we're talking about Aurora's pressure, something that he's been known for. To see him this quiet, very just uncommon of him. Same for Neil on the Fenrir, working for the Gauntlet of Thebes thus far. Different style of boots choices. Aurora going for more mobility on the Talaria boots, but Neil not worried about, I guess, the damage over time, so he goes for the reinforced Greaves.
I guess it's the Anubis, right? Anubis is all tick damage, so it helps him a lot into that matchup.
Scream, Berserker Barrage a little bit.
There's a lot of places where it would help him to have it, so not a bad pickup from Neil at all. But on this Fenrir, he's got some really good setup. We talked about how it could synergize with the other big CC on the team and how you don't know who to use beads on because everyone demands on SK's roster. So a lot of pressure, I think, on Neil, too, to be an active Fenrir.
I'm actually worried for Neil in the late game because I think Cyclone Spin is just going to blow him up on this Anubis. Like, I have fear in my eyes for Neil on this Fenrir. But something interesting I just took note of. Look at Solo or Troll's build. Not your typical Gladiator Shield start out of him. This is a very uncommon start, going for Berserker Shield instead. More basic attack focused as you're getting the attack speed, but more importantly, it's like less physical power and less physical protections.
It is. It relies a lot more on that sustain you get from the basics. But Amma kind of does feel like an auto attacker with her passive, right? You do want to kind of get those 3 basics built up so you can be doing more damage to them. It's just not how we often see her play.
But you only need 3 basics.
That's right, you don't have to keep doing it.
Yeah, you don't have to keep basic attacking for number 4 and 5, and it's hard to be in range to continue to basic attack unless you are maxed out in your aura stance, having that 25% movement speed. But then, if he's going to go for a Berserker Shield, he might want to synergize that more with Frostbound Hammer potentially, or a Horrific Emblem second relic to guarantee more basic attacks.
It's interesting. Solar Troll's going to have to show us, I think, that this one works out for the Amaterasu, who's coming a bit more flavor here now lately after getting some of her changes.
Because she's so good with cooldown reduction.
Yep.
Like, you want to spam your stance switch to get all that healing. It's just really good. It's 220 base healing plus the scaling of your physical power in the late game. So normally you would get Glad Shield because of that, right? And the 10% there, maybe Breastplate of Valor, maybe Genji's Guard for the MP5 to round out that 40% marker. So a little bit of a different style from SOT.
Well, SK Gaming have been the aggressor so far, and I mean that lightly. It hasn't been a ton of aggression, just a couple plays here and there. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see them next around this gold theory, and that's where Persephone can feel so tough. You don't want to kill her because you can still do all her damage when she's dead, but you can't leave her alive because she does so much damage, and she has one of the best controlling tools in the game with her ultimate as well. Trying to fight past SK towards objective is going to be really tough for Splyce. Their comp felt way more pick-oriented, right? Like they'd want this Thor and the Neat to work together, but we haven't seen much of that at all.
I don't think I've seen a single World Weaver yet fired from Veneno. They're more
one
content.
On Sam, yeah.
There's one. They're just content about farming, it feels, in that late game. They're relying, I guess, on this Amaterasu and also the Anubis to carry the late game.
Not easy to rely on that Anubis to carry the late game, but we don't get to see him try very often. We just don't see Anubis picked, so we don't even really know.
Curious to see how the transition for Belair is going to be on this set as well. He hasn't really gone for that all-in play outside of the one exchange of ultimates on the right side of the map earlier.
Yeah, who has more sustain between the Anubis and the set? We'll get a chance to see how that one ends up lining up as well once they eventually dive. But these are some backs coming from Splyce that I think SK had a chance to see, so they might indeed be planning to try this gold. But Cyclone Spin's here and certainly has some contest potential as the Gold Fury does finally get pulled in, but Scream takes to the sky.
Ooh, they heard that sound being queued up, Anvil of Dawn being used in the mid lane. So with that ultimate down, SK feeling more confident, I think, to push forward. The question is, where do they push forward? Is it going to be that tier 1 mid tower, or is it going to be alongside the Gold Fury for round 2?
Looks like it is going to be trying to bait in Aurora. They pull him towards Paul with the Ragnarok, and he gets some decent damage, but Aurora, for the most part, survives it. Brutalized there as well, but this Hercules still standing. Now Belair has shown up, and he's looking to stick on top of the Hercules. He finds himself a pick, and with all 5 members here, they can head towards gold.
Ooh, Belair not done yet. Trying to poke out Solar Troll. Cyclone Spin off the mark with the Mummify, as that was a very important Kingslayer to get that initial pick, and very patient was Aurora.
Sam for Soccer now quite low. Scream gets the kill credit. Gold Fury actually still standing and has been leashed fully. Now it's Splyce considering pulling it. Remember, SK used a good deal of ultimates earlier on in the fight. They might not be ready to try and stick around as Frenzy gets popped as well. Splyce burn it too quickly with the Anubis, and Neil charges forward, lives through the initial damage, but SK want more.
No, Belair's going to go in, but he doesn't have the Kingslayer.
He had beads, and that lets him trade with Cyclone Spin, but it ends up being 1-for-1. Neil Mock goes in for Venenu, but Neath blows him up point blank. Zapman makes it to the air, but that's a double kill now for Venenu.
Oh, no.
And Scream has Anvil of Dawn to hunt down Zap.
It's going to be a deicide if they can kill out Zapman agility after the persistent gust. The range not quite there, but the stun, the Aegis, the plays.
Zapman tried. I think he did just about everything he could to make it out of that one, but unfortunately it was not enough. A huge fight for Splyce. This game was dead quiet for 14 minutes, and then a cavalcade around the Gold Fury, and Splyce come out on top.
I like the idea that Splyce had, but Sam for Soccer, he didn't have access to the beats earlier, so he does have it now, making an impact, taking out Scream. He was level 12 when Sam died, but he didn't back to base to pick up the Purification beats, and dying with the Fear No Evil is what really allowed Splyce to reclaim the positioning on the left side.
You're right. I mean, that fight started with a pick onto Aurora.
Yep.
And I was like, man, this is a great fight for SK to be able to bait them in, but Anubis never lets you feel comfortable around the objectives, and SK end up kind of in this weird in-between spot where Splyce can punish, and they've got some really good damage from Venenu, too.
Hey, you know how much damage Anubis does just in general?
A lot.
Yeah, what if you added a Frenzy to that?
That's exactly right. I mean, they popped it for him in that last fight, and he was really able to kind of burst through all of SK Gaming. I think this Anubis could be a pretty legitimate pick. It's working for him so far.
So far, so good, and it's only going to get scarier. This is only a level 15 Anubis, maybe 3 items deep here, 3.5. Hasn't even finished, by the way, that crown that he's going to go for. I was thinking like maybe Dynasty Plate Helmet,
yes,
just to get some cheap stats.
But instead, he's stuck at the tier 1 as Paul is the one under siege. Wall catches him off, and the World Leaver there too, a sick Unchained, but that's too late. Paul has already dropped, but he can still drop the ultimate. That's exactly what's happening, and they have Scream locked in, Ragnarok as well, and Scream falls 1-for-1. Aurora now low as well, but the Unchained puts him down.
Oh, Solar Troll here now with the dazzling offensive, the stun, but the Fear No Evil prevents any follow-up.
This is so much control from SK Gaming from various sources, but Splyce is starting to navigate it now as they find 2 picks of their own. But Venenu being hunted down by Belair. The Kingslayer proves too much. Cyclone Spin gonna fall as well. That's a double for Zap.
Listen, Finch, just a minute and a half ago, it was Splyce that decided SK.
Exactly.
What just happened? It's SK returning the favor.
And a minute and a half before that, it was 2-0 in the kills. And now all of a sudden, there's been 13 more of them suddenly happening. Fire Giant now in the sights for SK, and no one from Splyce to stop.
I'll tell you what, though, regardless of who wins this game, I can guarantee Splyce is going to ban away the Persephone or the set, if not both.
Yes, very bold, I think, to let both of those picks through for SK, and you just saw exactly why. Those are the 2 big impact players in that fight, though, of course, I don't want to overlook the Fear No Evil from Sam.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, it's so difficult to try and decide when you tackle a Persephone in a fight, because she's going to have all her relevance either way.
And I think Splyce's original intent was to kill Paul before he got the 25 stacks on the passive to play Revive. If you can find that window, that's a good opportunity. But it was pretty easy to stack up that passive, I think, on her abilities. So not the greatest window for Splyce.
Well, let's just who are the 2 priority picks for SK? Persephone and Set. Who's at the top of player damage? Oh, it's Persephone and Set. No big surprise. These gods are strong right now.
Yeah, by the way, SK were first pick.
That's right. They should have gotten both.
They should not have gotten both at all. Like, that's obnoxious to see how Splyce got, Amaterasu and Thor. Now, I get it. Amaterasu with some of her changes as well. The dash feels more fluid. Her passive is good no matter if it's in the solo lane or in the support role.
Right.
You can never go wrong with dazzling offensive. But to give up the Set, I think this is Belair's most played god in all of Season 6.
And what a day, isn't it? I mean, Obey Alliance with the upset over Dig, and now SK coming in swinging over Splyce. I wouldn't call this one nearly as much of an upset, but it still was one where Splyce was favored coming in.
You know what it has to be, Finch? Now, after the last statement I just made, because it's not just Splyce giving SK Set, it's other teams as well. I think that Belair's just not getting the respect that he deserves in these competitive matches.
I think so too. And I mean, it's a crowded field in solo, so I think it might be hard to always want to give Belair some of the respect he deserves. He's on a very stacked team in terms of talent as well, but he does a lot of the times get overlooked. I think there's some validity to that.
Trying to go for the tier 2 tower with this Fire Giant buff for another 2 minutes. I think that SK have a really good sieging opportunity with Cyclone Spin dropping the ball on that ultimate.
They used it earlier, felt like they had a bit of a kill potential there, but it really wasn't much of one at all. Able to clearly walk away from that one was SK. But they're going to slow down a bit. They're not ready to brute force down the tier 2 when there's an Oni Fury. Just wait.
That's right. Not that big of a lead where you want to, force the issue, I guess you can say, some would say, but going for the Oni Fury now sets them up in the not this wave that's currently on the field, but the next one now. Before the 20-minute mark, only one big Gladiator minion that you can roll with, and if you can apply enough pressure on the mid lane and the long lane, the solo lane might go unchecked and the tier 1 tower could fall on its own.
Tier 2 and mid might fall before Splyce are even set for their defense. In fact, it will. Splyce don't even make it in here to try and slow it down. Now, this is into a Fire Giant team. Of course, you do want to cede some of the map up to them. You don't want to end up losing everything in one bad fight. But now, SK has turned what was just a 2 to 3K gold lead all the way up to 60 or to 6,000 gold lead in their favor.
I like what Scream was doing on the right side of the map. The old Season 1 Andonster, Season 2/3 adapting Thor split push style. If you're losing, you gotta force people to rotate on your side of the map, and then obviously if you're in trouble, well, you got that Anvil of Dawn anyway. Recognizing the rotations were coming after the siege was ended out of SK, he promptly backs up. Couple of towers go down during the Fire Giant siege. I think SK could have gotten a little bit more on the right side of the map, but this is a good enough lead that they can start building off of.
Look at this grouping from Splyce. They got 5 members in left, and I mean, it's not going to be a secret for much longer. SK Gaming should now be able to recognize just how many people are here on the left-hand side. And Splyce aren't exactly back in yet. They did send one member back, Aurora, to try and play some defense, but the rest of Splyce, they're going to try and force down this tier 2.
Yeah, if I'm Belair, I'm going to try to poke from a distance, give up the tier 2, and be the mobile ward to see if Splyce is going to back, and if they are, cancel their backs. Don't let them play defense on the Phoenixes.
Yeah, they're not here for this. Fire Giant's off of SK at this point, but they should still have relevant Phoenix damage once these minions move in. Neomar with the jump, but Aurora responds with a boulder. Still gets pulled back into the damage from Persephone, but a big ultimate from Scream slows things down. Response is the Fear No Evil, and Zapman finds one. Sam cuts down Aurora. That makes it 5 up against 3.
And because of the rotation, Solar Ritual and Cyclone Spin could never back. They were worried about Belair canceling out those backs. What an ultimate out of Scream. Hitting 4 players, the dream Anvil of Dawn, but not having Anubis to follow up is the downfall.
But it is still enough. They keep that Phoenix on the right side handy or healthy in a situation where they really could have lost it. So Scream makes a big play. And I do want to talk about this new Heartseeker a bit as well. I know it's been a big subject of discussion. Scream picking this one up on his Thor as well. It does add a huge amount of damage.
I definitely agree with you, but it's going to be against the tanks at this point in the game. You're not getting 400 power with the current build out of Scream to get the 6% health threshold, but even 3% of tanks that have, let's say, hypothetically 3,000 health, that's an extra 90 damage per ability. So not a bad look if you're poking out tanks.
Not bad at all as SK Gaming start up the Fire Giant. It's at half HP. Splyce are local, no ultimate for Venenu or Aurora, but Scream could take to the sky to try and cut this down, but they're still not even in range. This Fire Giant's gonna go down before they even make it into defend.
Yeah, Splyce not interested in that whatsoever, and I have to respect it, honestly. They're just not winning these team fights. They're putting themselves in this mindset where they would rather PvE easy than actually take a team fight, because everything that they've tried after the original Deicide hasn't worked. I guess basically they got the wind knocked out of them from a punch, it feels, after they got Deicide in return.
Yeah, I think what's happening is they're playing into Persephone's set, and that those gods are very good. And it's difficult, especially behind, to try and overcome how potent these two gods are at this point. And I'm not saying Splyce are 100% out of it, but they certainly made the job harder than it had to be in Picks and Bans.
This could also be a thing where SK Gaming could be just Splyce's kryptonite. Last time that these teams faced off in Phase 1, it was 4 months ago, where SK defeated Splyce 3-0. Granted, it was with Devios back then, playing the Aphrodite in Hades, but it's still a very talented Splyce roster.
Agreed, his Scream won't even make it to the sky in time. Zapman and Belair work together to cut him down to size. We won't even get to see the man from Asgard.
It just feels like SK are reading Splyce. You know, 2 or 3 steps ahead. Splyce makes a move, SK are already prepared for it.
It's like you said, sometimes when you go up against someone with such a similar playstyle to yours, especially when the playstyle is so explosive in either direction, it can be difficult.
Just look at the interaction of the right side Phoenix before the Anvil of Dawn. Neilmaw jumping on Aurora, waits out the boulder, anticipating that CC immunity. They're in each other's heads.
Aurora trying to defend on the right side Phoenix. Meanwhile, 3 members of SK threatening mid. SOT and Veneno are here to try and play some defense, but this Phoenix is coming down quickly. They're not even going to have a chance to try and stop this one. In fact, Neil jumps in just for good measure. That is the mid Phoenix.
And easily able to transition over to the right side of the map. Now Fireman is going to trickle down the mid lane. Fire Giant buff still for 2 more minutes. It's up to Zadman to get the damage off on this Phoenix.
Jump in from Neil, but World Weaver and Mummify were waiting. Neil responds to the Ragnarok. 3-man Fear No Evil out from Sam for Soccer, and he falls back. But Scream is in the air. Belair is already cut down. Cyclone spin, but Scream responds to make it 1-for-1.
The Kingslayer slays the Anubis. Cyclone spin down means a lot of AoE damage is missing. No ultimates on either side with this 4-on-4. Middle, Phoenix, keep in mind, is still exposed. Fire Giant for another minute and a half.
Phoenix exposed now at this point. Aurora taking some big crit shots out from Zapman, and he'll fall back a bit. But now it's time for the engage. Aurora tries to move in with the blink, but can't get much done there. But then he finds some damage on the Zap, but this has been a slow, methodical whittling from SK.
Zap holding his ground, very confident that he's going to sustain that one. Right side Phoenix falling as well. That's 2 Phoenixes down. SK Gaming with a very comfortable lead in the first game of this best-of-5 set.
When both these teams are willing to play so all in that it feels like Splyce's big interaction point was like 12 minutes ago, and they've just been down since then. I don't even want to critique the draft or anything like that. They lost, what, maybe 1.5 fights? And SK has just run over them since that point.
Now, I think Splyce is a team that has been tested before in the past and has made some epic comebacks, so I wouldn't necessarily count Splyce out of this set, even if they were to lose this game. But it definitely feels as though they are a little bit checked out. It just doesn't seem like they're getting anything working. But all it's going to take is one sick team fight from Cyclone Spin's Anubis to really pop off. But that last team fight, Belair literally sacrificed himself to make sure that wasn't a possibility.
It just feels like they're not playing to the comp they drafted, though. We talked about it earlier, that this comp feels really pick-oriented.
The globals,
yeah, it's so hard to get away from. And that, not only has it not been attempted very much, like 2 or 3 times, it hasn't worked any of those times.
And you would think that when you have the mage in the long lane, you would cater to your own mage, ganking them, but it was actually Sam for Soccer making that rotation first, even before having access to the Fear No Evil. It seemed that SK Gaming came in with a game plan, they executed it, they made slight adaptations to it, but once Splyce was tested, they couldn't make those adaptations.
Neil in again, and Aurora the target, he melts. Zapman has way too much damage here at this point. Deathbringer, Wind Demon, and Poison Star Executioner to shred through the prots, and Aurora can't do much against all that. Now with 2 Phoenixes down, SK poised to move into the Titan room.
Persephone controlling so much space with those plants, daring somebody to be a little bit closer to detonate them into place, as SK now going for the last Phoenix of the game.
On the left-hand side, it'll be a 5v4 without Aurora, but Zatman's low already. World Weaver isn't enough. The Aegis buys him time, but Scream dunks on him. The airstrike isn't there soon enough, and that's a critical pick on the side of SK. In fact, Scream, he's gonna handle it by himself with a double kill, taking down Neil. Paul does find SOT, but Venenu gets to Belair. Paul has to run for his life.
Trying to run away, but Nanu is there as well. Gets
Double.
Paul, despite being in the passive. He actually could kill Scream potentially here.
He certainly could. He's got a ton of damage. He'll run in and see if maybe he can take down Venenu. Okay, he can't. That'll be it there for the passive from the Persephone. But what a defense from Splyce. Why'd that go so well?
Well, Zatman used his beat super late. He got poked out way too hard, and without your Hunter being there, you're just lacking the DPS to get all of the kills. He did use the beats to agility wait, but by that point, 75% of his health was gone. It was a different story where Zap got rooted on the right side, Phoenix, where he was only getting hit by Venenu's Neath, as opposed to the damage from the Thor, the damage from Cyclone Spin's grasping hands. He needed to get out of there way earlier.
And that's what we meant about those semi-globals that time, because Zatman nearly made it out, but Scream was able to use the Anvil of Dawn to catch him. Oh, but Sam has Fear No Evil. Splyce are on the Fire Giant at half HP, and Sam has steal potential. But he comes a little bit sooner. Rather than risk the steal, he tries to push them off with his presence. But all of SK Gaming are here. A risky call from Splyce. Scream goes towards the back line, but Neil has Aurora caught inside the Ragnarok and the Fear No Evil. Boulder comes out as well, but Aurora falls.
Oh, and SK are gonna clean up the Fire Giant, bitch!
Annihilation.
And they're gonna keep on going. The monkey bounce not on the mark. Could have been a couple of more kills there. Wrong side of the wall for Scream, unfortunately. And you can sense it. SK can feel the wind right between their fingertips.
Yeah, but if you're going to call a Hail Mary play halfway through, you can't go, well, maybe we just throw it for 3 yards. I mean, that's not going to be enough. They didn't commit to it, and so SK win the fight, and they take the objective, and very likely just the game on the back of that right side. Phoenix is going to respawn right into their waiting hands.
It's possible. It's 4-on-4 SK Gaming. They reclaim the right side Phoenix, but they're going to be patient with it, Finch. They're going to transition over to the weakened middle side. They're not feeling confident that they can end despite it being even in the numbers.
I am a bit surprised at how slow SK are going to play this. They'll take that right side Phoenix for free as Paul shows some of this Persephone damage. Hello, Scream. They can come back and strip the jungle as well, and then make a nice concerted push as a full 5-man unit once Belair comes in. He doesn't have teleport, but he can hoof it there.
He definitely can. A little bit of mobility with the stone cutting sword. I like this item. We don't really see it very often, but reducing some of the protections is hard to really come by for any solo laner because you want to go hybrid, right? And
Yes.
this is what's going to allow you to remain hybrid.
We saw it a little bit more on some of our in-hand focused ones like Arachne and Mercury's when they were here, but Paul low already. There's the Fear No Evil yet again, and Aurora hasn't been able to do anything this game. 0-7-1.
Oh, Nilma gets chain stunned between Solar Troll and Scream with Cyclone Spin cleaning up a Belair. Gonna go the distance, trying to go on Cyclone Spin.
Yeah, he breaks through the Mummify. He has those purification beads. They've been critical this game. But Belair stuck in no man's land. Zatman finds Venenu, but Belair falls too. That makes it 3 against 3. Splyce are holding on.
Couple of fire minions under the Titan. Splyce gonna have to cater to that. Paul, Sam, and Zatman still alive, but need to DPS this middle Phoenix. No Hunter from SK, quite in range to go with this wave.
That's right, so they won't be able to threaten this Phoenix as much as normal, but Cyclone Spin gets dunked on. Sam Soccer makes his way there with that monkey toss. That'll be it for the mid Phoenix, and then might just be it for the game. Only 3v2. Solar Troll and Scream can defend.
Cyclone Spin too far forward. Scream was defending that Titan from those 3 fire archers.
Yeah.
Such a small set of circumstances that blow the game in a different direction.
Aurora blinks in. They're trying to control Paul. Scream took to the sky, but doesn't find much with the Anvil of Dawn, and Zatman gets yet another big kill, this time on SOT. They're pushing Splyce all the way back in their fountain. Now they're looking for damage on the actual Titan itself. Minions are pouring in as well to help out there. It's at half HP, but SK still on the fence. Now they've decided, let's move into the Titan room. Fear No Evil to control the space. Vin finds Sam, but the Titan falls.
SK Gaming getting game 1 now up against Splyce. Who would have thought that one? Outstanding performance from everyone involved. Belair diving multiple times in the end game. Zatman making sure that he was in the right position at the right time. Sanford Soccer with very timely ganks. Neil Ma on this Fenrir. Mind games up against Aurora's Hercules.
Yeah, I mean, just well executed by SK in the actual game, but to me, I still think this is a picks and bans issue for Splyce. I mean, it's so difficult to try and beat Persephone and Set on the same team. If Amaterasu is your next closest value pick, it's just not enough, I think, to make up for what they lost.
I kind of have to agree with you. You can't give up both. If you're gonna if you're gonna give up both, have a game plan for it. It felt as though there was a game plan with the global pressure of the Neath, of the Thor. They didn't utilize it onto Paul in the early game. Persephone got to the late game unscathed and showed its true power.
Yeah, it was the other way around, right? It was that Anubis that was the one that was getting ganked a bunch over there in the long lane, it felt like. So things don't quite work out for Splyce in game 1, but this is a strong enough team that can bounce back.
Skillshot, the official production partner of the SMITE Pro League.
Welcome back, you beautiful fans of the SPL. Game 1 is already over and done with. And would you believe it's a Persephone and a Set that ends up winning that game?
Wait a minute. You're telling me that Persephone and Set, two of the best gods in the entire game, beat an Anubis? No way.
Let's hold the phone on that first of all. Sure, they take down the game. I don't think it was just the Set and Persephone.
No.
Should they both be like through picks and bans on one team? I don't agree either.
No.
But I don't necessarily think the Anubis was as all bad as that.
It wasn't great, but really this whole comp from SK Gaming did a very good job of killing Aurora and putting him behind early on. Aurora was not able to be a factor in this game because of the Fenrir selection from Neo Ma. A lot of patience for him, but look at Paul's damage. 38,000 damage. The next highest is a full 20,000 behind that.
But that was like a 45-minute game though, right?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was short.
You
it
said
wasn't
yeah.
that long.
You said yeah.
No, it was not. Do not give him this pick, dude. I said that I don't want to see Herwind on this pick because that seems like his type of god. I don't want to see Paul on this pick because it's his type of god. It really just seems like a god that he's going to be able to do a lot of work on. This is the perfect example. You kill Paul, great. Tosses the ultimate, immediately kills Scream because of it. I mean, it is so important, and it makes sure Aurora gets killed at the exact same time. Don't give Paul Persephone, and Sam for Soccer deserves a ton of credit because despite all these insane picks that were given over to SK, it really was this Hun Bats from Sam for Soccer that set the game up for success.
Real facilitator play here. And here's a tale at the end of the game too. This fight was fantastic. Watch the boulder and then watch Zap go in and go, hang on a second, low health fire giant? Don't mind if I do, boys. And then on to get the victory.
Just march on to victory. And then there's Paul doing this kind of stuff. I mean, he even built a little bit of defense. He had a Breastplate of Valor in the build, and he was still chunking. It's really, the ultimate is so good at killing whoever you want to kill.
Yeah.
Don't give Paul Persephone.
We did see a little bit of Set too. Obviously, Persephone is the forefront of that because mainly Set did a lot of facilitating of kills himself. Got targets low, Zap got a couple of doubles, triples in that.
Yep.
There was a point in that game, though, around 15 to 20 minutes where it was a deicide for one team, deicide for the other team, and it was still caught in limbo of who may end up coming out on top in this. I will say, I think the picks on paper, we will always discuss Set and Persephone being the top two right now, alongside maybe the likes of the Isis. But I do like what Splyce tried there.
I don't mind it.
Like, I'm not against it.
I don't mind it, but SK is not a type of team that you can just go in and say, oh, we'll win no matter what we do. You know, that is not SK Gaming. Despite their inability to stay consistent, their high end is very, very high. And they usually play up to that type of opponent. So putting yourself a game down by going and giving up 2 very strong picks and, you know, taking a pick in Anubis that's experimental, not bad necessarily, but experimental, does hurt you for sure.
Is this Splyce challenging themselves though as well?
A little bit.
I think of it that way too. Like, if you're going to be willing to give up those 2 gods and you're going to go for an unconventional composition with Anubis, and that's the only reason it was unconventional is because we've not seen Anubis in a while, then are you planning that you may go down a game here, but you're experimenting, you're trying to find new opportunities, you're trying to learn to play from behind, and not in terms of an actual, you know, physical lead, I mean, in terms of games.
That happens in scrims. I don't think it happens in SPL games. You're definitely testing the waters on, can we give them this pick? Can we give them this pick? I mean, that definitely happens in the middle of an SPL set. I don't think you know, dive head first into the pool by giving them Persephone and Set. You kind of control the equation, right? You only give them one variable.
But talking about it now, why I'm surprised to see Splyce are the ones banning Persephone.
Agreed.
SK banning Set makes sense to me. They're not going to be first pick. But Splyce could have had the same opportunity that SK did to take one of these.
I agree, but maybe Splyce doesn't value it super highly right now. I don't know. That's what that ban in the second phase, or in the second part of the first phase, tells me, that it was an obvious ban to them. They had no consideration of maybe leaving it open, and they decided to take it away. I'm a little bit surprised, to be honest. I feel like that's a god that Cyclone Spin could do some nonsense on.
Agreed. And on top of that, too, see the Toth banned away by Splyce this time round. You don't see the AMC or the Anher band, which we did in Game 1, so there's a couple more of these Hunters up and available this time round. Thor still on the table will be the selection for Viriziel. Forget it, fantastic game and it screams, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm never going to get that right.
Well,
I guess it each season, and then half the time I'm right and half the time I'm wrong.
I mean, it's been Scream for a little bit now, right?
He had an name, it confused me.
Oh,
Yeah,
hey,
all right, fair enough.
He'd have Viriziel 1 as
He
well.
was Viriziel 1 for a little bit, but back to the Scream days now. Thor first pick does leave open on her. Wouldn't be surprised if SK took that for themselves here. Maybe even AMC. They decide to stick to this Jingwei Fenrir. They want to stay similar to that same composition. And if I'm Splyce, this tells me that maybe we might see Paul on something like the Habois, something aggressive that can get in there and fight dirty with all this front line.
I think it's about trying to shut down a little bit of a Raw too, and funny enough, he's going to go back to that Hercules, which is one of the things that Fenrir pick is clearly showed can cause problems for potentially in this scenario, where Neilmar looks for the ults and the big engages that can be shut down pretty heavily and shut down what Hercules can do.
Love this Chiron pick, though. I mean,
Really?
as soon as someone is in that Ragnarok, you just drop a training exercise right underneath them. They're cleansed. They're out of there. You did a little bit of damage all at the same time. This Chiron pick, so smart from Splyce. And SK is going to stick with something in the mid lane that can brawl pretty well. Persephone and Hell both can play very aggressively, get into the middle of the team fight, and make some noise happen.
Anything you can cleanse, I can cleanse better, says SK. And with that, they'll take away King Arthur just in case you can't get the cleanse off in time and then the Sky.
Yeah, I wonder if this makes SK less likely to ban Amaterasu because it is a very telegraphed CC that you can cleanse very easily. I don't know if that's the right plan, though. I mean, Ama does bring a lot, even if Solar Patrol wasn't super successful on it in Game 1.
Kabrakan taken away, seeing the rise of him in the jungle position, which is interesting when you look at what SK have drafted so far. Do they need more CC? I mean, Magical, sure, could be a little bit more helpful there. On top of that, they'll take away the Humbats. Very
Smart.
respectful ban there. Sam had a fantastic Game 1 on that. That was very reminiscent, that Game 1 performance from SK, of their World Championships run.
Yep, it was really funneling through Sam and Paul in the mid lane, Neomod fighting in that 3v3 very well, and then Belair and Zapman both having very clean, consistent games coming out of the side lanes. I like the idea of an Amaterasu here. It's another very cleansable CC with that ultimate, as I mentioned, but it's one way to play against cleanses is you just overload it. You just make sure that Chiron has to use it on the Ragnarok. Now he won't have it for the Dazzling Offensive. It's one way to combat it.
So you go Ares jungle next, right?
Let's play.
It would
I mean,
be
that would work,
Oh man, well, the Chiron cleanse is still scary, but
It
yeah,
was
it could
jokes,
be sick.
but yeah, you talk about
Against
overloading
Bastet,
it.
well, hey, could work, and they go back to the Anubis.
Game 2?
Wow, and some chills happening on the set right here for Scream's Bastet. Didn't take him long to decide to pull it out. He did tell me earlier today, and I quote, "I'm done messing around." So there you go.
But then he locked in Bastet, so clearly no.
Yeah, I don't know. Listen, I'm just saying what he told me.
Sure, SK with their final pick will lock in Susano for the jungle for Sam this time round. Obviously, there are a lot of options available there. Susano versus Bastet matchup.
Very, very difficult to play on both ends because Susano, it can throw that jet stream, wait if you're pounced. It's really when you bounce in and get jet streamed right away, it really removes that option to pounce back safely. But Scream, I've noticed when watching his Bastet, does not do a lot of in and outs with the pounce.
Commits.
He's very committal with it, and so that's something that might not matter as much to him as it would to a lot of Bastet
I wonder
players.
if SK have scouted that a little bit then and are aware that's the style of Bastet he will be playing. There's a lot of escapability on the side of SK though, barring that Hell. Now the Hell as well is the one that will technically shield trying to just re-sustain up or fight fire with fire by turning to that dark stance.
It really does output damage faster than Anubis could at life steal through it. I mean, it's big burst damage for sure. A lot of CCs that need to be cleansed on both ends. I think that these mid laners, Venenu and Paul, have a lot riding on their shoulders. You do naturally when you have a cleanse, but especially when it's CC this important, like a Thor Dunk or an Anubis Wrap, if you're Paul, or on SK's side, the Ragnarok or the Dazzling Offensive.
Is this Thor solo then?
No, I think... Oh, actually, you're right. It is. Yeah, it got to be Thor solo. I didn't even think about that.
I was just
yeah.
going through it, but I'm like, hang on, well, who's
It's gotta
solo
be.
in here?
Yeah, it's got to be Thor solo for sure.
What's
Solo
his
Troll
Goobus?
loves this pick. He played it at MSI.
Oh, yep.
So this is a pick that he really likes. That was before the rework of Thor even. This is a pick that he's very comfortable on. Solar Troll definitely, doesn't have the experience of most SPL players, but mechanically, I think definitely in that top echelon of players, Thor seems like a god that he will do very well with.
We won't see as many of those global rotations in the early games at the moment. With how this is going. The players are still getting themselves ready, just so you know. We will be going to the game momentarily. But for now, we can still discuss these picks and bans a little bit more.
It's going to be a lot of fun, I think, this game. Splyce go back to the Anubis. They go with this less frontline heavy. Thor definitely an assassin still. Has some warrior-esque traits with the stun and the CC, but
Passive.
overall, yeah, I mean, the passive makes him want to be in the middle of the team fight. I still feel like Splyce are really relying heavily on Venenu and Cyclone Spin to make plays with gods that are on two different ends of the spectrum. Cyclone has to be very, very defensive and wait for some help from Venenu a lot of the time, I think, if he wants to be able to make plays. But I don't know. Anubis must have been going really well in scrims as of late.
Clearly, because they've gone to it twice in a row, left it for last pick too. The Splyce composition, the mobility of this roster is great. I'm just worried that they're not going to have as much mobility as they seem to think they will against the Amaterasu and the Hell. Both of those give speed to their teams.
They do, and they can really chase you down very easily, and that makes it
And
that much
Susano.
harder. Yeah, Susano. I mean, Fenrir with multiple jumps. Jing Wei, of course, with her ultimate and long dash. It's going to be tough, man. Cyclone has been playing like the best player in the world this phase. I really feel like he has been that guy. Anubis puts that to the test because it really tests your mechanical skill, your positioning skill, when you're going to all in, how you're going to all in. I think it's going to be tough, and this composition has to kill frontline well. I mean, you have to be able to slow them with Bastet, set them up with Hercules, and kill them with Anubis.
Well, enough from us. Let's get it over to the casters for game number 2.
Thank you, Hindu. Thanks, Aggro, as well. And we are indeed moving into yet another game where Splyce have a bit of an odd composition. Solar Troll with the Thor in the short lane. Scream on one of his signature picks, if not his signature pick, on the Bastet. And Cyclone Spin insisting on this Anubis. But looks like this time he is going to go the Bancrofts right away.
It feels that way with at least a tier 1. He definitely likes the Mage's Blessing to get that extra MP5. The more mana you're missing, the more mana you regain. There's a lot of animals in this game, actually, Finch. There's 2 dogs, a cat, and then a horse.
That's right. Yeah, we got a lot of them hanging out this time, so we might need animal control to slow this all down. Paul on this Hell in the middle lane, though, I feel like there's a ton of pressure for him. He's going the old school Book of Thoth rush we don't see as much anymore, too, so he could be a bit vulnerable.
And this is something that used to be banned away from him all the time when he was first into the SPL. It was the Hell, it was also the Habwa, sometimes the Raijin. Those were his 3 go-to picks, but he's flexed those picks so hard now that he's going to be able to get them. Aurora cleanly should be able to invade that speed.
That is where he is. Scream considered giving up on his speed, but now he's hanging around letting Neil be the one that's actually leashing it. So he's kind of turned the tables on him, uses the bead so he doesn't get stunned to confirm it. I like the way Scream played that.
That was smart. He needed those beads because the timing of Neil's stun, he anticipated to get the stun and leave the camp with just one more basic attack. So huge mind games between those two players.
Yep, that was perfect. Great work there by Scream to respond. Now, the good news is that Neil Ma, by virtue of making Scream play it that way, has already done his job. Even though I think Scream did well in that to mitigate his losses, he was still harassed, still had to use his beats early, and was slowed down on his normal jungle pathing as Aurora might get soloed here in the jungle, barely makes it out of there.
Oh, Neil only level 1, though. Didn't have the Brutalize. Sam for Soccer could be looking potentially for that jet stream. Didn't have the range to hit Aurora because of the speed buff mobility, but so he opts for Venenu instead. And you got to respect Paul's hell, man.
Do you think there's any chance that Splyce, when they play against Neil, are like, oh, is this what we do to people? Oh, this isn't fun at all. And they're like, now that they have to play against essentially a mirrored version of it. Because Neil, like you said, really does play almost the exact same way in the early game. They both like to pick aggressive gods and then harass as Zatman holds onto the beads again. He is so patient with those.
Yeah, when I'm playing rank now and I'm in streamer mode and I see a Hercules support, I'm like, is this Neil or is this Aurora? Because I can't tell. They're definitely doing the same exact thing that they would.
It certainly would be. Zatman holding onto the beads. We'll see if that ends up mattering later, as Neil might have bit off more than he could chew. Aurora finds first blood this time, so things look a little bit different for Splyce in Game 2. Though Vin is quite low, Sam might want to keep up the chase, but doesn't quite have the damage.
Just too low level, unfortunately. A good little patience out of Scream, hiding on that left side of the map, baiting out the Neil Ma's Fenrir, because he kind of gave him that false sense of security that it was going to be a 2-on-2. Suddenly 3-on-2, and Neil Ma was only level 1. Didn't have Brutalize to jump safely under his tier 1 tower.
Right, and ends up being first blood for Splyce, and they get away with that one clean. A much better start for them because Aurora was a non-factor in Game 1. In fact, even worse than that, he was a detriment with the way that he was so far behind. But this time, he's setting up for the team. Neil ends up being low, but SK steal the fire, or red buff, excuse me.
That's definitely what they wanted out of that one. Cyclone Spin not going to have the damage compared to Zap's basic attacks, but he's definitely going to have the out-clear potential, even without finishing off even Talon's Trinket. This Anubis, very high in the damaging, and I'm curious, can we look at what he's leveling up? Okay, so it is going to be the third ability regardless. I was just kind of curious, because sometimes you only need 1 point in your 1 if you have Talon's Trinket to fully clear the wave, but with this build, maybe Cyclone Spin, being an innovator, would have changed it, but being more standard, he's looking for kill potential with the combo, the wrap into the 3, into the ult.
He's now level 5 to stay even with Zatman, who hit it a little bit early, but Aurora, consider rotation. Remember, Zatman did hold onto the beads earlier, so he'll have them to reposition here if he needs it, but he just channels the airstrike. Does have to use the beads to channel them a little bit sooner, so a nice gank from Splyce, even though they don't get the kill.
I like this pressure. Last time, it was the Sam for Soccer special onto Cyclone Spin that really shut down Cyclone, even before the Fear No Evil, but this time around, some assistance from Aurora, and this is what you want when you have a vulnerable mage in the long lane. It doesn't matter which jungler it is, but there needs to be some pressure to either get this mage super ahead or shut them down before they get to that point.
And you heard them talk about on the desk, Sam was a huge factor in the last game. I know that Persephone in the set dominated our conversation here, but the Fear No Evils really were nasty. He's going to have to try and have that same impact on the Susano this game, but it'll be a bit slower. Susanos usually wait a little while before they really start to dip their toes in the water. So we'll see how the Susano can control the game this time.
We haven't talked about the solo lane matchup, but I like what Solo Retrol is doing in that lane. He's kind of looking for just long-range poke with just a hammer, not even the stun, before the Amaterasu has a lot of sustain through that aura switching. As Satman has to respect Aurora's presence, but now, when you're making these rotations, you're sharing a little bit too much farm, so Satman's going to get to that level 7 marker first.
Oh, it's just Venenu here trying to defend against Sam. He does so successfully, and now he does have the squad. Scream drops the cats, and Sam's not level 5 yet. That makes it an easy pick for Splyce, and they defend the buff.
I love Venenu's patience, not using Centaurus ultimate to confirm the kill. Jetstream was down, Stormkata was down. You're in combat, so there's no way he can blink away. Driving strike from Aurora to seal the deal. Normally you don't want to give your support the kill, but when it's on a Hercules support, yeah, give him the kill, because he might just kill Neilma if he gets a good bounce.
Up into the air went this Thor. That was Solar Troll making an early rotation, and he catches Neilma off guard. And I think you have to do stuff like that if you're going to play Thor solo lane, is have some early rotations.
Absolutely. I don't even think the Excavate connected. That kind of damage out of the level 7. Oh, Cyclone Spin with a solo kill almost?
Almost. Zatman recognized that he had time to channel that airstrike and get out of the damage from grasping hands before it actually ticked. Can I just keep saying, by the way, that Zatman's still nuts at this game? I love the way that he plays, and watching him is always so fun.
Paul almost killing Aurora for the second time this game, but what is F-Dot saying? Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades.
There it is,
and Aurora doesn't mind being tickled like that. He's got some self-sustain for himself. He's got the HP 5 from the Guardian's Blessing. He'll be fine.
He will indeed be able to make it out of there A-OK. But this time it's Neil that's the support that's behind and struggling in the early game. And I expect this set to look like this a lot. One of these supports is going to be way ahead, and one's going to be way behind because they're both going to swing for the fences from minute 1 as Neil leaps in.
Oh, it doesn't look like he had enough stacks on his passive to apply the stun onto Venenu, but gets off a little bit of damage. A huge contest for just Oracles. Normally you don't see this kind of rotation as it gets split 1 for 1.
This gets split right down the middle. Aurora finds Neil again, but can't pull him back in. Instead, he's the one pulled, but Sam can't do quite enough to Aurora this early, so he makes it out of there A-OK. But I expect we'll see this pace continue. Both of these teams willing to play aggressive even early.
I definitely can see that as well. When Aurora's positioning himself like that on the left side of the map, it's like kind of playing hot potato. You know, with your friends kind of deal, just kind of like throwing it at one another to see who's going to catch it, because Aurora is going to be hitting just as hard as you're hitting him.
Exactly. Aurora does not mind getting pulled into the action. A lot of the times it helps him as he was trying to see if he could bring Neil back towards the squad. Level 9 now for this Anubis. He did go up to the Talon Trinket, but stopped there, not fully to the Bancroft Talon at this point. He went ahead and got the cooldown boots so he can move around a bit faster in between.
A little surprising not to see Shoes of Magi on Anubis. You want the penetration with how many ticks you have on your ultimate.
Paul's low and the boulder gets there. Scream gets kill credit. Neil Ma's low as well, but manages to get the Ragnarok off. So that does going to mean the end for Scream, but it's 3 for 1 in favor of Splyce. Cyclone Spin melts Sam for soccer. And SK Gaming can't hang on, and Zatman stuck in no man's land here. What's this?
I don't know what he's actually trying to do, unless he's going to kill Venenu with an airstrike and then lands down, but as long as Venenu has mana for the dash, he should be safe.
This is what I mean about Zatman. It always feels like he just has the right read. Maybe not so here as he gets pulled back in, but recognition that he wasn't as much danger as I thought he was.
Well, there's always the idea of like, all right, well, if they're going to try to go for my tier 1 mid tower, at least I can flank and kill the archers with my explosive bolts, get them off of the tower, or if they're rotating towards Gold Fury, I'll be prepared for it with the cutoff and buy some time to delay, because hard to kill a Xingwei, even on that side of the map, in a 1v3, you can easily airstrike into safety.
Exactly right. So as long as you have that airstrike, Zatman still feeling confident on that one, but Splyce needed a big fight like that in the middle lane. It did cost them Scream, and you never want to be losing your jungler in those early skirmishes. They're so valuable up on the map farming, but when you get a 3 for 1, you're not feeling too bad.
No, you're definitely not feeling too bad, especially when you're still ahead of Sanford Soccer anyway,
right,
with that depth. So it's looking really good for Scream. That's on the right pacing as the jungler. A lot of credit to Solar Troll making 2 very impactful rotations in this game.
Solar Troll could be in a bit of trouble. Sam's on the right side to catch him out. Solar Troll has Anvil of Dawn. He can start channeling it if he feels like he's in trouble.
Or kill.
But he uses the hammer for the kill. Solar Troll
and he's
showing
out.
up. Cyclone Spin gets the kill on Zatman. That's a solo on the left-hand side of the map and a 2 for 1. Splyce just making the individual plays.
And this is why you draft Anubis, baby, for the solo kill. Zatman.
What? This is what it looks like when Splyce look unbeatable, by the way. They're just everywhere on the map, making big plays. Aurora with the blink in the driving strike nearly gets the bounce back onto Neil, but not quite there. But Splyce sometimes just are hitting everything, and they look unbeatable.
The momentum is there for this black and yellow squad, even starting up the Gold Fury pre-10 minutes. Very convincing lead.
That was so impressive there from Splyce. And I love when we talk about momentum with Splyce in particular, because they literally use it very well. When you're pulled to different parts of the map because you're losing in lane or solar kills are happening, they know how to take advantage of that time when you're not set for your defenses and grab Gold Furies or Pyros. As Zatman jumps in because he's a maniac.
He is a maniac, but he's on the floor.
I love watching him play, man.
I don't know about that. Now, granted, Cyclone Spin doesn't have his ultimate, but it's a red buff Anubis. And when you're point-blank range anyway, that Plague of Locusts is enough damage to want you to evacuate the premises, you know, at all costs.
Right.
So, yeah, Zatman's a little cray-cray, you could say.
He is, man. And you watch his player cam, and he looks cool and calm and collected the whole time, even as he jumps into an Anubis point-blank. But he made it back out of there perfectly. It was the right play.
There's a lot of mind games between both of these teams. Even that 1v2 from Solar Troll, he was holding onto the hammer initially in fear that if he threw it out too early, he would have been disrupted, whether it's the Susanoo pull or the Ama dash. So he waits to see that, hey, they just used both of those abilities, right? Typhoon takes a while to knock you up. Amaterasu needs the third strike to stun you out. So the hammer was thought about being used defensively until he realized, wait a second, I'm just basic attacking both of them, getting 20 power because of my passive, and all of a sudden, he changes his mind to use that hammer offensively and even has timing to get the ultimate off to escape.
It's the confidence that I think SOT was missing when he first subbed in for Splyce back in Phase 1. I mean, we talked to Aurora a bit about it, and they said they felt like they kind of had to coach him a little bit too much for him to be quite as helpful as they knew he could be. Now it feels like Solar Troll, playing with this team for a while, is able to confidently make those kind of calls on his own, and that's that corner Splyce needed him to turn, and now that he's here, he's a big player.
I mean, despite his lack of SPL experience compared to some of the other players, such as Cyclone Spin and Zapman, for example, he's playing as if he's matched those years of experience,
right,
being able to make plays like that. And this is why he's been drafted onto the Splyce roster from the very beginning, because of that confidence, that kind of swagger that he brings to a team, and his willingness to learn. And considering how young he is, that could be very hit or miss depending on what team you are. But I think he's adapted to the Splyce culture.
He has, man. And I know that this team is different than what they used to be, but I mean, that core, Cyclone Spin, Aurora, and I include Kabam in that, this coach for him, he's such a strong presence on this team. That core for them is very conducive to that kind of environment where you can help coach up someone like SOT. And now he's to that point where that sort of raw ability that he had is just kind of is in the direction that they need it.
Aurora should be fine there, walks away. By the way, just wanted to point out, in that soul lane, oh, Zapman, take a little bit of poke damage there. I think Belair just finished off stacking the Warrior's Blessing 30 seconds ago,
yes,
when that little animation went off.
SOT had done a really good job. I noticed earlier he was like 4 stacks ahead. And I know that was a long time ago. It should have been stacked by now. But he'd been fighting Belair from range really well and not letting him hit him with abilities.
Now, that's not much to go off of, but that's still 15 protections on both sides that it's nice to have when you're getting ganked from the junglers.
Certainly would have helped earlier on. 0-0-0 for Belair, 2-0-2 for SOT. And then the same level, the difference is that this Thor can impact the fights when Amaterasu can't. He can make rotations that Ama just can't match. And SOT getting perfect value out of that. But this is night and day from game 1, isn't it? I mean, Splyce having a very impressive game here.
They definitely are. I think Scream is more comfortable now on this Bastet as opposed to the Thor, giving it to Solar Troll instead, making these rotations, shutting down Paul on the Hell. Very important to shut down Hell. Last game on the Persephone, they couldn't really make that happen, so instead finding it at least on the Hell, because the late game power from SK is also to be respected.
Yep.
They have good offensive capabilities, but also defense. They have the mobility from Belair, the healing from Paul. If things go bad, they have a great contingency plan.
They certainly do have a way back out, and Jingwei crit damage, Hell sustain, and her damage too is not to be scoffed at. So Splyce want to keep this going. They might need to do so sooner rather than later. That's why they're brute forcing the tier 1 tower. Aurora pulls back in, but gets cleansed, so he makes his way back out. That's 2 kills in the back, but Aurora is going to fall. Zapman gets a double kill, taking down Scream as well, keeping SK in it.
Biting off a little bit more than they can shoot for sure. Didn't anticipate those quick rotations. Paul gets pinned between a rock and a hard place. He should be fine with some of the sustain. Cyclone Spin now making his presence. Gonna Aegis that knock-up, absorbing 3 basics.
But he says the Death Gaze doesn't matter. Paul deletes him from the game. That's Anubis in the middle of the sustain being burned. Now SOT in some trouble as well. SK Gaming aren't going anywhere this easily. A takedown Solar Troll.
He almost got out, Finch, in a 1v3. He was juking to his heart's content, but man, still not able to get off that hammer teleport. And just like that, it was a 2-for-2. Suddenly becomes a 4-for-2, and now it's SK that's going to get the gold.
They have it and take it quite easily. Splyce now in a much worse spot than where they were. And this is what we always say, man. When Zatman's behind in games, he takes those. They always manages to find a way to get back into them. So SK Gaming right back into this off that big fight in mid. And I think Splyce might have just been a bit too aggressive under that tier 1.
They did, but they had the idea, I think, almost fail-proof. They knew that Aurora was going to get picked up by the Ragnarok. They had the cleanse ready, but then the counter-rotation from Belair on this Amaterasu, finally, this 0-0-0 Amaterasu that we were just mentioning makes the biggest impact at the most important timing window.
Brings them up to 1-0-3 and actually a good bit ahead of Solo or Troll now. But that gets matched elsewhere on the map. Scream still out in front of Sam for Soccer, and Neil Ma has been struggling for farm. At this point, they're probably okay with it. Just let that farm go to their other 4 carries, and Neil will do his best to contribute as Solo or Troll chunks.
He's so good about hitting that hammer without any sort of CC setup from himself or anyone else. Scream was considering making that dive, and because of that poke, now Stanford Soccer has to back, still behind Scream on the Bastet.
You're right. I mean, you can trace that poke from him right to this Pyromancer that they're now looking at because the Emperor Soccer can't be here. He's still making his way. Solar Troll takes to the sky with the Anvil of Dawn, and no one can contest. And a lot of that individually goes to SOT.
And this is the experience that you want from a very competitive team, is you got to give up objectives that aren't worth contesting.
Yep.
Obey in the last set, when it was Ducky and Mineral overstepping their boundaries, kind of lost them that game, but SK Gaming knows what it takes to find victories in a losing position. This is a team that lost to Insignum Season 5, qualifying to HRX, that suddenly won all the way through the placements, beating E United in the very first round of Season 5 Worlds.
You're right. They went from dropping to a minor league team to semis at Worlds to show you their ability to turn the situation around. And for what it's worth, I think a core part of SK's identity is how willing they are to kind of give stuff up on the map and just fall back and play Phoenix defense. And they're the best at it in the league, I think, at Phoenix defenses. The game simplifies down a bit, and they communicate so well in that defensive stack.
And I got to give that credit to Zatman. He has that tenure of, you know, back in 2012 competing, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's how old school he is. And now he's not making the calls the early game. That's going to be Sam. That's going to be Neil. But in terms of tactics and repositioning, making the call from the backline, he's the general leading the troops.
Not always the one that's out there on the field making the direct orders, but he has the bigger picture in mind at all times. And that's why Zatman now has a slight lead over Cyclone Spin with the Wind Demon in tow, as opposed to Neil, who only has a non-stacked Gauntlet of Thieves.
Not a good look for the 0-4 Fenrir, but man, is he definitely being annoying regardless of that disparity.
He can still Ragnarok and pick you up. We talk about all the time. Gods that can still do their thing even when they're behind. And Fenrir could struggle sometimes. He likes to be in the thick of things, but Ragnarok still picks you up. Unchained still stuns no matter where you are.
That's definitely true, but I like this pickup from Aurora with a Frenzy now. He's going to be accelerating that damage from Cyclone Spin. We saw how quick it was to snatch away that Gold Fury in game number 1, but what if there was an advantage on the right side of the map to amplify for the Fire Giant?
Frenzy's become a bit of a staple pickup for Aurora. Blink into the Frenzy with a Relic Dagger somewhere in the build so that those cooldowns are shortened. That's just the way that he likes to play.
And he's also a full item, 2 full items ahead as he just picks up the Relic Dagger, mind you. Shield of Regrowth, such a staple item for a Hercules. You pop the mitigate wounds, you're either running away faster or you're catching up to them to pull them back in.
It just feels cool. It's a literal go button, right, for Hercules, where now you're zooming and you got a little bit of a pocket heal waiting on you.
And it used to have 20% CDR, Finch.
Give it back, you know. What's wrong with that?
Remember the F-Dot meme?
Well, yeah, well, you don't want that to be happening, right?
No, you definitely don't.
Tom's not even here, guys. You and Handyman bringing him into my cast.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let him enjoy his vacation.
If I was talking with Tom about Shield of Regrowth, he would not let me forget that it used to have 20% CDR.
It used to be much better than it currently is. And now, thankfully, it's in a state where it's much healthier. So we're thankful for that. We're thankful for Tom, even though he's not here today.
Hope he's having a good time.
I'm sure he is, right? He's going to TwitchCon. If y'all are in California, he would love it if he said, hey.
Hell yeah.
Splyce had to slow this game down a bit, though. I think they overstepped in that tier 1, so they've been right to kind of pull back a bit. But we talked about... No, I said pull back a bit. Guys, Splyce. No, no, I said pull back a bit. It's Fire Giant time now. Neo Ma, the only one nearby. This actually might be a brilliant call from Splyce. They pop the Frenzy. Anubis burns the FG like no one else. And that's the Fire Giant for Splyce. They get Neil as well. Belair does find himself a stun, but Splyce are on top.
But can they get any other picks off of it? Belair now going to get stunned with the grasping hands a little bit, over 50% health in the backline. San Francisco keeping Cyclone Spin out.
Blinks on him and is able to find the kill, so they do punish at least one member of Splyce. Zapman has to use the airstrike, but SK are on full retreat mode. Their health bars are too low. Solar Troll catches up to Zapman. Belair gets pushed back in by Aurora, and he can lead on a chase for a while. Alma's very fast.
Yeah, I don't think, even with Shield of Regrowth, having 10% CDR, you're going to be able to catch up to that speedy Amaterasu. Good shot calling out of Splyce, recognizing they had the positioning and the DPS required before SK can go in there to contest. And also, Aurora's patience of not popping the Frenzy right away until it was more guaranteed.
If you need any more evidence of why I'm on this side of the game, though, it's that exact interaction. When I'm saying Splyce should slow down, they're pulling Fire Giants, and they're exactly right. SK Gaming weren't expecting it. SOT with the up-down on the Anvil of Dawn. It does get him out.
That was cute, although it's Paul that's going to make it not cute for Scream without any assistance.
He ends up dropping. This tier 1 tower might be cursed, guys. You don't need it. Go somewhere else. I mean, it has not worked yet pushing underneath this structure. SK Gaming might have been hit by a haymaker, but they're not reeling yet. They're going to head right to Primal.
Yeah, somebody has to be the person calling Splyce back when they're too overextended. When SOT went in the sky, I thought for a moment they were about to 2v1 onto Paul under that tier 1 middle tower. It didn't look like he was super healthy.
Said Primal Fury being pulled now by Splyce. Neil does stun Aurora and they'll pull him back, but I think Splyce are okay with this. They'll take the Primal and just say, Aurora, good luck. In fact, it ends up working. Paul melts Anubis. Death Beam comes out and it shreds right through him. But here comes Neil Maul to the back line. Belair there for damage. Sam for soccer gets Cyclone Spin, and suddenly it's a 3-for-1.
Not going to be more than that, probably, Finch. SOT up in the sky, 2 for 2. Thus far at the end, Zapman could be the target without the healing from Paul. I think that SK Gaming were a little vulnerable, but Splyce not wanting to overextend.
So they fall back, I think, correctly. With that Primal Fury in tow, so they can burn those FGs quicker in the future. But remember, that was an FG team that SK just fought into quite successfully. It's only left on Aurora and SOT.
Yeah, I mean, they got the Fire Giant buff off of Venenu.
Wow.
Zapman barely, oh, never mind, not getting out by the skin of his teeth. No beads available or Aegis.
And Belair can be in some trouble too. Does find a 2-man stun, but Solar Troll keeps up the chase. No wall available yet. He's going to keep running. I don't know if Belair can run fast enough.
Oh, he needs to get in range of the Berserker Barrage, but he can't catch up.
Amaterasu is so fast at this point. Even Solar Troll with the hammer couldn't close the distance. And finally, this cursed tower will tumble down.
And this could be the beginning of the end, potentially, if SK don't fix their mistakes soon. But then again, Splyce are kind of making the same mistakes. They're overextending in positions that they shouldn't be, wasting time when they could be going for objectives. Their tier 1 tower fell to minions. All that time spent chasing out the Amaterasu could have been used to saving your own tier 1 tower.
Hindu Man said that he's worried about Heartseeker on Hunters as Pyromancer gets burned by Splyce. And we are starting to see it. Chiron in the middle lane picks this item up. And I do think Chiron's one of those hunters where it can be scary. Where him, you think of like the Uller as well with all their extra abilities. 75 power, 10 pin, all that in mana. Venenu's going to want that on Chiron.
Yeah, you also want the MP5 to spam those abilities because you're going to be baiting out Aurora plenty of times, so you're going to have to training exercise him. It's not just a Heartseeker, but it's also the Transcendence. That 200 mana helps you out a little bit with the Jotun's Wrath as well, with the Transcendence passive, that 3% as well. So was that 350? You're looking at about an extra, what is that, like 9 to 10 power just from those items.
Not bad at all. Splyce look to get aggressive. Blink from Aurora. He doesn't immediately go into the driving strike and doesn't find anyone with the pull, but he does still have Solar Troll coming in with the Anvil of Dawn. Boulder there for the follow-up, and that's a ton of damage. Zapman gets walled off but manages to squeeze his way past. but can't get away from Mjolnir.
This is the Bash Brothers. I love to see two aggressive warriors hand in hand, just giving the backline the absolute business. And this was an old school dual lane matchup when it was the Hercules and the Thor way back in the day. Kind of the Bruise Brothers, if you will.
And SK Gaming couldn't handle it. Yilmaz biding his time, does go right for Cyclone Spin, but he's not the one that threatens the Phoenixes nowadays. It's actually Venenu. As they take down the left side Phoenix, Aurora managed to keep 3 busy, but finally pays for it with his life. But that's a trade Splyce would make every day of the week.
He actually almost got out because of that Mantle of Discord proc, but there was just too much follow-up damage. Splyce is willing to sacrifice Aurora if they could continuously get objectives off of him. Last time, before that Phoenix, it was the Oni Fury, and this time, the more important objective.
Solar Troll's up in the air. Anvil of Dawn forces Belair back, which gets the team out. And Belair, I think, used beads there, predicting he was going to get hit by the Mummify. We'll have a chance to check in a moment. But SK can't quite make Splyce pay.
A little bit of a trap there set up
No,
onto
doesn't
Belair. He should be fine anyway. SK will clean up the red buff at least. It's going to slow out Belair, but yet again, as long as he can get some assistance.
Scream. For a moment there, trusted the cast, but then threw back the cat scratch to guarantee. Now look for the trade with Sam, but that's a tough one to take. Just if anyone's wondering, it was the cleanse from Paul that came through. But SK Gaming on the Fire Giant, it's only Solar Troll here to stop this from happening for now. They have it below half HP. He goes right towards Zatman instead of trying to steal to slow them down. But in comes Splyce to steal. Cyclone Spin with the Death Gaze snatches it away.
Oh my goodness, Solar Troll with a double kill. And I love his positioning, Finch. He blocks Zatman's basic attacks from DPSing the Fire Giant while he's also harassing.
Solar Troll's too far away to turn this one into a quadra kill, but that's a big fight. That might have just well been the game for Splyce. They're going to head right towards this right side Phoenix where it's exposed, but I think they can push past it. The left Phoenix is already down.
Uh-oh, Sanford Soccer might be the next victim. Off the mark with the stun. Solar Troll covering the option. Jetstream gonna get him out, but that Titan is exposed.
It certainly is. They already have a minion wave there. Now Belair is up to try and make the defense. Frenzy now popped, and Belair keeps Venenu zoned out, but the Titan's at half HP already. Sanford Soccer is sent back to the grave. Titan and below a quarter, and Splyce do enough to even up the set.
Anubis with a 50% win rate, but in all seriousness, the Thor going from Scream's hands into her Solar Troll was the biggest win for Splyce that I saw. His rotations were impactful in the mid game. His presence of chasing certain kills out very good in the late game. That was the moneymaker.
And it's hard for Venenu, I think, to stand out on this team sometimes, but he had a great game on this Chiron too. Was there with those cleanses when they need him. His damage was a constant source of pain for SK Gaming, but Solar Troll, I think, is the one that got this done this time. I gotta agree with you, Toli. That Thor for him is scary.
It definitely worked. I mean, just look at the 1v2 that he had behind the Fire
that was
Giant.
nuts.
Great mechanics displayed there. His awareness of when he needs to rotate, the way he extends his advantage from the lane, knowing what to do, whether it's a blue buff invade, proxying, or making those rotations. Gotta respect the Thor now. Maybe SK Gaming might have to ban it.
It's something that they're going to have to consider. There's been a lot decided in the picks and bans here, I think, in both of these games here so far. Another thread, these aggressive supports, whoever has the better game has won it so far.
SteelSeries, the official peripheral provider of the SMITE Pro League.
Welcome back to the SPL this afternoon. So far, we've had a fantastic day, and we're still all tied up in the second set now. SK versus Splyce, 1-1. Splyce answer back with Anubis after losing game 1 with Anubis. Tell me more about the Anubis, Ryan Bailey.
It does objectives really, really well, and this is a return to an identity that Splyce had as soon as they picked up Scream and Venenu, where it was all about just going to objectives. They start this frenzy meta, and a lot of teams started it, and then Splyce moved away from it. Other teams have moved away from it, and Splyce, I think, have just gone, why don't we just do that again? That worked really well, and Anubis does that part of the game better than just about anybody. I like it quite a bit. It worked well in that game for sure.
Really felt like a scrappy game from the outset from both teams. Happy to fight in the mid lane. You can see SK given as good as they get here, but they're not given as good as they get at all. Splyce are dominating these fights and creating a big lead off the back of it.
And SK makes a couple of plays to come back into it, but Solo Troll on this Thor man was just so good.
You know,
he's so solid at this pick. Mechanically, it was just amazing.
There's times when a play comes in the league and I'm never sold. Solo Troll was one of those that I felt like had more work to do. Compared to what I see on his stream and his ranked games, his decision making in a pro sense is on another level too. He makes the right calls a lot of the times, in my opinion, and doesn't get tricked into the style that a ranked mentality will give you.
Yes, he really is a team player now and is learning to understand. I think his biggest problem towards the beginning of his SPL career was that he was a little he was playing too selfishly. He was too scared to die. And sometimes, not in this game apparently, because he goes 11-1, but sometimes your job as a solo laner is to die. And in this game it wasn't, because he was hard carrying outright. Beast performance from him, really, really impressive. Scream on the Bastet made a couple plays. Cyclone Spin was able to make it work with this Anubis. Venenu, even if he wasn't always cleansing Neilma's Ragnaroks, that threat changed the way Neil had to play, and Neil was completely negated in this game. Super ineffective in comparison to game 1. And now SK say, okay, we beat you with a strategy game 1, game 2, you adjusted, now it's our turn. SK needs to find a new strategy. It cannot revolve around this Fenrir support.
Such a wild ride for this Splyce team through this year with how it began. Obviously, World Championship into big roster changes, more roster changes, and then further roster changes. Like, it's been a real series, and they're still a good shot at winning Worlds.
I think they're one of the best teams in the league right now. They're the 6th overall seed, but I agree. I'd be shocked if they didn't finish at least in the semifinals. This is a team that has so much potential. They just have too much skill, man. I mean, Cyclone Spin, I think, is the best player in the world right now. Scream looks like one of the best junglers in the world right now. Aurora affects games more than any other support a lot of times. This team just plays so well as a unit. Ven is the perfect role player, and I think that people perceive that as, oh, he's not as good as the other guys. He doesn't need to be mechanically as good as the other guys. Ven does his job perfectly, and that's a reason why this team hums so well.
I will say with Splyce, though, I said top 4. Honestly, they're probably on the bubble for me with United. Those are the 2 on the bubble for that 4th spot. From the other 3, I'm a little bit clearer. I just don't want to shy away from the fact United still exists.
I don't know, man. I think they're pretty solidly top 3. I think Renegades and Rival and Splyce are the pretty definitive top 3 for me.
I don't know, man.
Maybe not in that order, but probably.
That's not how I wrote it. Let's just put it that way. We'll see.
Lucky.
SK with the ban of Oleron and Thor Persephone, followed by Circuit, or Circuit followed by Persephone, I should say. Back to SK again. Will they leave set open? I would if I was them.
I would. I mean, Splyce clearly definitely has to respect it. But they didn't respect it if you ban Isis here.
Yeah, I was going to say bad Isis, right?
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Take away the Thor from Solar Troll more than Scream necessarily. Not that Scream played poorly in game 1.
Not at all.
But certainly in comparison to what Solar Troll was able to do in game 2 right there was pretty vastly different.
We really got to see the potential of both these 2 teams in the first 2 games. SK had a fantastic game 1 performance. Sure, they got some stronger characters, but it was a team effort. Splyce, meanwhile, they can show they can play from a deficit, play from a game down, and also play against some tough opposition to fight back into this and make it a 1-1 series. Set is the first selection, however.
No surprise here. This is going to be going to Belair. We haven't seen anyone else from SK play this pick, and I don't think we'll see anyone else from SK play this pick.
You know, when we reiterate that line, does that not make you think that players sometimes will sleep on it and keep hold of it? So maybe Zap can play this and then bring it out later on down the line.
I think set ADC is really, really good, honestly.
That's what I'm thinking.
And could be solid, but I don't know. Zap been playing Hunters for a long time. Maybe we should keep it that way. You know, we've seen the Zap Vulcan. Me too. We should probably keep it that way. You know.
Oh, okay. Zap only in the Hunter role.
That's right. And
So
the
he-
Morrigan. The Morrigan is his best mage, for sure.
Is he allowed Kronos? And
Yeah,
Sol?
that's basically a hunter.
Freya?
Yeah, those are all hunters.
Olaron?
Yeah.
Wow, there's more and more mages coming through where you could do it.
Yeah. And then the Morrigan, and then the hunter tab.
I'll be honest, his best performance was probably the Ul game. That was a good one.
Yeah.
I missed that. SK will lock in the Toth. It was banned in the first phase of game 1, I believe, away from them by Splyce, but it's going to slip through this time for Paul. Do you really see Paul on this Toth that often?
Yes, I think this is the type of god that Paul can play very well because it's mechanically demanding, and Paul is certainly one of the best mechanical players in the entire league. Also has a really good sense of the flow of a fight on when he's supposed to go in and when he's supposed to stay out of it. That's one of Paul's greatest strengths as a mid laner. Thoth really does work well when that's your skill set. I like the idea of the Neath instead of the Chiron this time. Chiron tempting in the face of Hun Bats, but you want that long range damage with the Neath because Thoth is going to get away at low HP sometimes. Give me that World Weaver. Let me send it his way.
I know even if you stun at max range, you've got a chance for Osiris or Hercules to potentially close the gap in that window. Now with that and her banned away by Splyce, looking to lock down a little bit of more of what Zap could looking to bring here. Toth's flexible to the duo lane too, don't forget.
I was going to say it might be Zapman on this Thoth, and we'll see if that's a mage that we can add to his repertoire that I don't feel nervous when I see it get locked in. It can be very, very good in the long lane. You want to get it as much farm as possible, but Moswall made me a believer in Thoth mid again with how well he played in our earlier set today.
Back over to Splyce then, after SK ban away the dodgy, so focus from SK towards the jungle. Splyce still doubling down, expecting that it could be a flex for Ul to Zap or Paul. They can both play it very well. So good idea just to take that one out if it is Toth in mid or Toth in the duo lane. They kind of get a win of a ban with both of that Ul.
I feel like just based on Splyce's bans, it looks to me like they expect this Thoth to be for Zapman, just based on these bans. If I'm banning duo lane hunters, it might be a little bit different. I'd be banning Jingwei. I'd be banning other things that Zapman has played as of late. Anhur and Ullr can be played by Zap for sure, but this tells me that SK might be putting it to Zap.
Okay, with Osiris, Hercules, and Achilles, one of those three has to jungle.
Achilles.
And expecting Osiris to the solo laner?
Yep.
Achilles jungle?
Yep.
For Scream?
100%. And Scream might be going the one-shot Rangdas build on it as well. The Hydra's Transcendence, Heartseeker now, with a Rangdas, you can blink in, you can pre-pop your 2, blink in, auto 1 someone, and they instant die. Or you can pre-2, pre-3, blink in, shoot it auto, insta-kill them. It will 100-0 a squishy.
Interesting.
But
I'm excited to see if that can happen.
that might be more of a YouTube video sort of thing and less of a competitive play sort of thing.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I know Scream does like to be flashy where possible.
Yes.
That is
if Scream
option.
can win with a little bit of pizzazz, he would never use that word, but I will, then he's
Does he even
definitely
know
gonna
that
go for
word?
it. Almost certainly not. No.
He does now.
Yeah.
We'll find out if he can do that. Chernobog Toth interchangeable, I feel, here. And this is a good thing that SK have done once again here, Ryan, to give themselves that window to be able to switch these about mid-game even.
Merlin as well for Cyclone Spin makes it so you can put either one over there, I think, but both are in a little bit of danger. Remember how well Cyclone Spin played this Merlin at the midseason invitational. This is a big pick for him.
Well, this is game 3. We're tied at 1-1. John Finch and Anatoly bring us game 3.
Splyce and SK all tied up. Finch and Anatoly here as we kick things off one more time. It is going to be the set in the hands of Belair, a scary prospect if you're a Splyce fan.
Man, no Anubis this game.
Boring.
Splyce dropping the ball. But I'll tell
Try-harding.
you what, though, Achilles jungle is going to be a little spicy. But it needs to be paired up with some real presence out of Venenu on this Neath. We saw him play the Neath in game 1. A little quiet that game.
I agree. They've got to make sure they're calling his number a little bit more often and looking for these plays around that World Weaver. It's such guaranteed setup in most cases that you can't do much about. And then you're going to have Scream there to follow up.
Now the question is, where is Scream going to gank? Is it going to be Belair or is Zapman? There's a small window where you can gank Belair. After you cross that window, no longer shall you make your presence in the soul lane. Zapman on the Thoth up against Cyclone Spin's Merlin. Should be a spicy 1v1.
Zapman steps up close and uses the damage in Cyclone Spin's face. Meanwhile, over at speed, Neil Ma blinked past the cavalcade that Scream had defending him in order to strip away the speed, but couldn't make it there in time. Scream defends it successfully, but Neil, as he often does, will stick to him.
There are 3 players with 0 experience so far. The Athena, Set, and Osiris. This is actually really, look at it, they're just having a standoff.
Well,
is
Neil's happy with this trade, yeah.
This is weird. I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people, are not huge fans of it, but at this point, it's become the most efficient way. You're letting Zapman and Cyclone Spin get all this farm, and you're denying it on the Scream, who doesn't have an answer.
Now, this makes sense for Scream's point of view because Solar Troll is able to out-clear Belair in the solo lane, so you can eventually pair up and clear the blue buff together. But now this gives a small window for Neil to at least get those back camps. He gets the 2 smalls. He doesn't have a window to get the big one, though.
Yeah, he's still really struggling for experience here at this point.
Well, he
Neil
didn't even
just
get the
hasn't gotten
smalls.
to do anything at this point with 0.
Wow.
He'll rotate into the back of the middle lane with Veneno and use the dash to help clear, but up until now, he hasn't done much at all.
Wow, I thought he at least got the 2 smalls there, but I guess because he didn't start the shield wall with just a dash, you don't really have the damage. Despite the AoE reach damage, Paul gonna get pushed back into danger.
Paul isn't certainly in some trouble. Scream now here as well to grab what should be an easy first blood. And of course, Aurora finds his way to it. Somehow, he always manages to be wherever the first blood is.
I don't mind a Hercules support getting first blood. Get him very beefy. Give him some gains while we're at it. Get him to get Splyce, that comfortable lead. Can we take a look at what Paul's leveling? I'm actually surprised not to see him dash away.
Right.
And yeah, he didn't get the dash.
That's a great call. I also was assuming it must have been on cooldown at that point, but if you can get away with it here in the middle lane, it helps accelerate your clear speed to put 2 points in that first ability.
And can we also take a look at what Venenu's maxing out? Because level 3 is that weird, awkward window where sometimes you might not want to get your escape because it hurts your clear, but that goes into the mentality of how confident of safety you have, whether or not you need your escape to begin with.
And in the middle lane, usually you lean more towards getting that escape. There's just more people there. We see a lot more of that in the long lane here, but it looks like this time Paul went for it and does indeed end up getting punished in the middle lane. And he used his beads. They'll be back up, though, very shortly, so it must have been before that death that he had.
I think Aurora was no stranger to the mid lane.
That's probably why they aggressed. They assumed he had the dash. They're like, well, he doesn't have beads. He's dead. And they didn't have the dash either.
Yeah, that's always that awkward level 3 phasing. So now I think in the next games, every single time Paul is level 3, he's going to be thinking back to that moment of when he died. Like, man, if I only had the dash.
Exactly. He'll probably be leveling that for a little while just to make sure that he is safe. It looks as though Venenu is starting here with this tier 1 of the Transcendence. Last time, at least, elsewhere, we saw the Transcendence wait a while. Van will probably go for it right away as Neil finds a 2-man top, but Paul stunned into the dash, and it's the backflip BM kill from Venenu. Paul goes down. Obviously there it is actually for damage, but that's what we like to call it.
That backflip, though. Unfortunate, though, for Paul. He wasn't able to dash into a wall.
Right.
He just wanted to get under that tier 1 tower as quickly as possible. Veneno channeling that ultimate in case Belair was going to contest that blue buff, not stepping forward. So more freedom for Veneno to keep stacking there with the second kill of Splyce going to the Neath middle.
That's where you'd like to see it. 1-0-1 for Van and 1-0-1 for Aurora. They've been a great combo here so far in this middle lane. And I think that the real thread to follow in this set is going to be between Neil and Aurora, and which one of these 2 supports is going to be able to do a better job of this early game harassment that they like. Neil's nowhere near as far behind as he was in game 2, but still, Aurora's been more successful.
And he's still playing the Hercules in all 3 games, so I like that confidence. Scream trying to set up against Neil, stunts him out before the dash.
Yeah, no way for Neil to make it out of that one. That's just perfect from Aurora yet again. And it's so tough giving Aurora the Hercules because sometimes it looks like game 1 where he's 0-7, feeding his brains out, and you win the game easily. But most times he looks like this, where you just can't seem to stop him. He won't miss, and he's always finding the right targets.
That actually gives Aurora strength. The more disparity there are between kills and the deaths.
Yes, Aurora now in some trouble. Fear No Evil is finally the answer back that Sam needed, and this was part of what caused him so much trouble in game 1 was that Fear No Evil Ragnarok combo.
That blink so important now. No wards for Splyce on that left side of the map. Good pathing coming out of Semper Soccer. Also going on the right target. Most people would be like, oh, there's a squishy Hunter over here, but no. The better target was Aurora. Before he has defensive items, he was still at about half health from that previous poke onto, or rather from Paul's root combo.
Venenu also no longer has beads. That cooldown was forced. He also doesn't have boots. Goes right into the Transcendence to get things started. Unlike Paul, who has been under some duress this game, so I think I understand why he picks up the Ninja Tabi.
Oh yeah, he needs that mobility, and it doesn't hurt to get the extra mana in case you need to dash away.
Scream considering a gank attempt, but Belair able to make the jump to that clone. Sam for Soccer well on time here with the rotation. Means blue buff can't be stolen by Splyce, not this time.
Very important there because it was very recognizable what Splyce's intent was, where they invaded
Paul.
the blue buff 2 minutes ago. Paul.
Into the wall, he's going to have to wait on this taunt, but Neil doesn't get it. Oh, but Neil does end up blocking the World Weaver, but that might cost him his life now, but still has the dash, able to make it out of there. I like the idea from Splyce, but I think Neil, by almost accident, ends up in the way.
I didn't know what was about to happen, so I was just waiting with bated breath because all of a sudden, who knows, Aurora could easily hit the pull mid-dash from Paul after he comes out of the wall. There could have been anything there, but the anticipation. Now it's Sandman in a 1v1.
Well, they know that Cyclone Spin just used his flicker, so this was an easy call for Zatman to make. But there's
Double
two people
kill.
in the execute threshold. That's one for Scream, but Neil might be too far now. Makes it back out. It's a 1-for-1.
Did he have the blink up? No, he actually used that to get into the long lane. Paul used that Living Nightmare. Gets pulled, waiting on the driving strike.
But Aurora always uses that combo so well, but the boulder this time off the mark. Good jukes there from Paul and the root, which means that he might have to stick around too long inside the tower. Scream gets the kill. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Paul ended up falling.
Yeah, Paul on the left side does fall on their
Solo
right
Troll was the
side.
other
Solo Troll gets actually soloed, or was there a rotation from Sam for Soccer?
Ends up falling over there. It wasn't the kill for Belair, so there must have been a rotation because he only has an assist here at this point. So I imagine that it was not a solo kill. But a nice rotation on this left-hand side from Splyce to at least answer back. But that call's probably going to happen a lot. Zatman saying when the flicker's down so Neo can ult over.
You got two rotations. It's not just Nilma, it's also Paul on the
Sure.
Living Nightmare. And because of that global rotation, unfortunately for Paul, he gets his third death. Not a good look for Chernobog.
Well, let's even go back and take a look at how Solar or Troll ended up taking that spill. I imagine Sam must have rotated over for that one. And yes, it was a Fear No Evil that catches him off guard.
Okay, so SOT was feeling a little bit confident, looking for the back camp, invades, bites off more than he can chew. Ultimate was used very late there. Could have used that damage mitigation before all those abilities.
Solar or Troll had a really great game 2. I wonder if a little bit of that energy carried over for him into game 3 to where he might have overstepped a bit. But it's certainly not the end of things for them. Solar Troll can now regroup and try and make sure he plays a bit more measured here in this game, as it's been a bit more active this time around. A lot of rotations and a lot of pressure from Aurora.
Yeah, I think both of these teams are warmed up now. You know, they drank their G Fuel. They're
Zap had his coffee.
Yeah, they stretched. They did their morning stretches and whatnot as, 1-to-1 apiece. And who would have thought, right? SK Gaming, with their current record standing versus Splyce's current record, that they even had a shot coming into this set. But this is still anyone's set to win.
It absolutely is. It's so close. And it's SK who are the ones coming in with more to lose. Splyce, I mean, obviously are in some danger too. They're also on that bubble. But it's SK who are trying to fight their way into the top 6 rather than Splyce who are potentially in danger of losing it. So this matters to both of these squads. They both need this set win.
Oh, yeah. This would also separate them so far away from each other. That would be the 9th win for Splyce, whereas SK Gaming would no longer be able to get that 10th win, as they need 4 in total to get that. So every game has to be near perfect against such a high caliber team like aggressive Aurora style. He's going to make your comms so confusing. That's his play style.
Solar Troll being dove underneath the Tier 1 tower. Lord of the Afterlight allows him to reposition, and Belair and Neil Ma will not be successful. In fact, Belair might be in trouble. World Weaver comes through, and Neil can't quite hit it. He tried to dash in and stop it, and now Scream's here. Execute threshold for Neil, and that's another kill for Scream.
Oh, man, so unfortunate there. Global meets global. Neilma makes the rotation. SOT avoids that Defender of Olympus with the up-down, and then not being able to tower dive such a tanky Osiris gives enough of a window for the rest of Splyce to counter-rotate.
And Veneno has been getting value out of this Neath. 1-0-3, either whether it's the fights that are happening in his lane or using the World Weaver to help out elsewhere. So far, we've been saying we got to see some value from it. I think Vin's done that so far.
And because he rushed the Transcendence, he's now just finished off stacking it, having so much extra power because of that 3% passive. Now, even an extra 1,050 mana, not a bad look for Veneno. That's a 1 level lead above Paul.
He's at 20% CDR now, too, so the ultimates are going to be available more often for him on that World Weaver thanks to this Transcendence as well. So a nice build path for him so far. As Splyce enjoy, like you said, about 1,000 gold lead. Not quite as much as you might think with how active they've been on the map. But SK have done a good job rotating the buffs. The blue buff, we saw them rotate over and not let that get repeatedly invaded. And SOT getting, not soloed, but going too far forward hurt them a little bit too. SK Gaming are holding in there.
They definitely are, and some of that disparity doesn't even come through the form of Totem of Coups, as SK has that advantage, or Gold Furies quite yet. Still trying to find those objectives. It won't be until some of the respawn timers are much later in the game. This level 11 or lesser marker, you're looking at 25-second respawn, something like that. Easy to make those rotations.
I feel like, though, Totally, SK has a pretty good edge in the late game. I mean, the Set, the Thoth, and the Chernobog. You got Athena to set them all up. This composition from SK gets pretty potent the later this goes.
I agree with you, but I think on the flip side, Merlin is a little scary.
Sure.
Neath kind of falls off as she's more ability-based anyway, but she controls a lot of space. Hard to siege into a Neath
Right,
that
with all those
has
weaves.
that or not the World Weaver, but the broken root on the ground that you could pop with the root. SOT is going to mitigate a lot of your damage as well. Paul's not going to have an easy time.
Red buff being invaded as Paul comes back out into the boulder. Luckily, he was kind of within it the whole time, so doesn't get hit by it twice. But that sets up for the red buff to be invaded for Splyce. And Paul has to back, so they can go to gold. But Paul can ult back in with the Living Nightmare.
He definitely could, and I think that's why Splyce don't want to start that objective, not having World Weaver or the Excavate for the confirm. Just going to be happy to make a play in mid.
Oh, they caught Aurora trying to disengage with that driving strike. Blink into the Fear No Evil. Paul's now suddenly here as well, but Aurora too tanky.
Oh, no.
One more auto would have done it, and he lives.
Oh, but Paul's not going to live. His dash is down. Execute not even required there. Paul misses the root once he lands from the Living Nightmare. Great rotation from SOT now.
As he looks for Sam for Soccer in the jungle and cuts him down. That's 2 for Splyce. And this time they should feel pretty good about heading over to the Gold Fury, because I don't even really think they had to use any ultimates except for Lord of the Afterlife for those last 2 kills. Now they're pulling the objective, and really the only one nearby is Zap.
He needs to hit the final judgment from a distance, but they know exactly where he is. Not interested in stopping that one. Was kind of worried that he might have gotten ambushed, so I guess he was hesitant about coming through.
Indeed, instead, make sure to try and cut their losses. That's the dash blocked from Neil, and a 2-man taunt doesn't help much here. Scream finds one to complete the rampage, and now Belair in trouble, has to run back to the tier 1 tower with his tail between his legs.
Using the Kingslayer just for the extra mobility on top of the Sandstorm, as the
Pyro.
World Weaver was used trying to kill Neilma. Actually hits Belair instead, so yeah, get one objective on the left. Why not settle for a second on the right?
Not bad at all if you are rooting for the Chaos side team here this time. Splyce has taken what was a small 2K lead, or 1,000 I think even, and now pushed it all the way up to 4,000 in their favor. Experiences right there with them, and it starts with them trying to kill Aurora, and they couldn't quite lock him down.
Splyce is a team that you cannot make mistakes in. When you calculate damage on trying to kill a support, you better be too near perfection. That mitigate wounds is not maxed out yet. Aurora's still not at the level 12 marker, but it was enough of a heal that he mitigated most of that damage anyway, survived long enough to get under that tier 1 tower and give everyone from Splyce an opportunity to fight back.
Well, that is the blink down for Aurora. He doesn't have the Relic Dagger yet to shorten the cooldown. He'll be going Shield of Regrowth into the Relic Dagger just like last game, I imagine. But, like you said, I don't even know if the calculation was wrong. It was the execution, as they couldn't quite get that route onto Aurora, and SOT makes it out.
Well, the thing is, even if they do, I think they're still in trouble
Sure.
at the end of the day with those counter rotations. It was overextension for sure. Using a Fear No Evil when Hercules already has Gauntlet of Deeps fully stacked, really risky there.
I see what you mean. Even if they get the kill, it probably comes at too much of a cost. Paul gets rooted by Ven. Paul being very patient there with his dash is able to make it back out as Neil uses a good taunt to stop Aurora's aggression. This is just Aurora looking for a pick.
Yeah.
Because there's not even objectives to go get right now. He's just bullying Paul.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Aurora, like, even if he misses his pull, to still just go in with a driving strike just for poke damage, and if he can land the excavate, force Paul back, that's still farm that this Chernobog isn't getting, still giving Veneno the level advantage.
And I wanted to talk about this last game, but part of what makes Aurora's Hercules so potent is that he doesn't use the 2-1 as if they have to be linked all the time. He'll use the driving strike when he needs a stun, or when he wants to push someone out of position. He'll use the 2 to pull them back. They're great as a combo together, of course, but they don't have to be used that way, and Aurora shows it.
I mean, just look at his player damage as well. He's in the, the 6th position so far from a Herc support. Not really that common to see, where,
Right.
you know, your side laners are kind of, or like the mages rather, are not contesting above the supports, but that's just the presence that Aurora brings to the table. He's willing to be very loose with all of his abilities, especially the ultimate.
He's ahead of most of SK Gaming, 3 members beneath him in terms of damage. And at the very bottom is Cyclone Spin, who hasn't had to do much this game, but that is a scary prospect for SK. That means he's farming away and ready to start pushing in. Those are the beads out from Bel Air, which means the World Weaver stun comes through at the tail end. But even if they don't kill him now, they might have a chance to get him next time.
Did he also use that Kingslayer ultimate there? No, okay, not going to be the case. I thought he was animated for the... Oh, he did use it. Okay.
Wow, you're right.
Phasing away, because those little red spikes behind him means he has that extra mobility. Very fearful for his life after that ultimate. And honestly, the way Splyce have been grouping, I don't necessarily blame Bel Air from using both of those defensive options.
I mean, he's right. They committed quite a bit onto him. The World Weaver was there and some other CC2 to try and lock him down. He barely manages to make it out. So he was right to commit everything that he did. But as I was saying, Cyclone Spin will be a terror when he does eventually join these fights, probably around this next Fury spawn. As SK are just afraid, man. They've got to use all these ultimates just to not die.
These were used. Paul's dead to rights there. Veneno gets his second swag flip kill. Zatman might be in a little bit of trouble, but he's getting help.
Defender of Olympus comes through. Good Aegis, but an 876 final judgment makes it pretty hard for even Cyclone Spin to make it out. But Scream wants to go for the dive. Can't find the damage, but there are more members rotating in. Frenzy Pop, driving strike into Excavate. Spells the end for Zap.
Oh, and even the pull onto Neilmar just for good measure.
Execute.
Execute at a Scream for the 3rd kill.
Yeah, that sounds like a Pokemon that's dumbly designed, and Execute that time takes care of SK Gaming. Sam has to run as World Weaver chokes him into the Spirit Flail. Perfect combo. SOT trust in Ven to be there, and they find the kill.
You want to talk about momentum, Finch. Talk
Yeah.
about a waterfall of deaths for SK Gaming as Splyce is just getting Tier 1 tower on the left, Tier 2 to follow suit, and now even the Primal Fury.
And there won't be anyone to contest this one as Bel Air is way, way off in Antarctica on the other side of the map right now, just trying to find what farm he can. And I think that momentum is just the right word for Splyce. No team takes one small advantage as well as them right now. Maybe Rival, but it feels like Rival does it all at once. Splyce feel almost improvisational, where they take it as it comes and they're able to overwhelm you, and you just can't respond in time.
Hard to predict what their real intentions are, right?
Yeah.
Like when they use that World Weaver on the right side onto Bel Air without real follow-up, by just forcing Sanford Soccer's ultimate in the mid lane because of the poke from SOT. By the way, no Lord of the Afterlife was used for that kind of poke either. And then all of a sudden, left to his own devices was Paul in the Chernobog because of the pressure onto the previous 2 members.
0-5-1. This has not been his game. A Breastplate of Valor. We see this sometimes from
Wow.
our mid laners, but this is going to cut into his damage a lot. Not much attack speed, no pen. He's just going to have to hope that this defense is enough to keep him alive.
65 protections is nothing to scoff at,
a lot.
but without any real health to follow that, he's still going to be in a lot of trouble. Maybe having Mantle of Discord would have been better because of that CC cleanser once you do reach under a certain threshold, but I think he also wants more mana to synergize with the Transcendence, so in a way, that extra mana you're getting from Best Plate gives you physical power through Transcendence.
That's a good point. So it's not a complete loss in terms of his power spike right now, or curve rather. Fire Giant being considered by Splyce. Instead, they'll pull Neil Ma back in, and this Athena at this point is just a sitting duck. The taunt's a nice idea, but the boulder from Aurora flattens him, and they can head right back to FG. I mean, at this point, SK are just splitting the map to try and farm.
I think Aurora definitely with an overkill there. Once
With
he
the
got the
boulder?
pull, well, that too, but once he got the pull, he didn't need to push. The Judgment Tether from Solar Troll was still onto Neil Moss.
Final Judgment doesn't come through in time, but he was there from Zap.
Splyce now trying to make something happen out of nothing with the fire jump, but they just lost 2 towers on the left, 1 tower in mid, might be even a second one if Aurora can't stop this.
Yeah, Aurora does keep the tier 2 up, and I don't think that Paul can stick around to try for that Phoenix. Zapman, the evade and punish, but misses, so SOT blinks
dead.
back in. He'll get some help from Bel Air. Lord of the Afterlife off the mark, but SOT gets in there with the sickle, now fighting 3 members by himself, while the rest of his team does tier 2s.
Oh, needs to hit the skewer. The final. Oh, I love this play here from Sanford Soccer, guaranteeing the ultimate, but Aurora not done yet. Wants
And
to
catches
stop the
Belair.
backs.
That's so crazy. Aurora's a nut, man. I mean, I don't know. I know sometimes he has bad games on the Hercules, but I just don't think you can let him have it as Scream takes down Sam.
Scream. Very impressive what he just did there. Using the Fatal Strike to use that as a gap closer, knowing he has to blink closer. If he was off by that second and a half, the Sacred Monkey tosses from Sanford Soccer probably would have got him into safety.
That's another tier 2 tower now for Splyce as well, as you're right, Scream's had a monster performance, 7-0-7. They're now up 8,700 gold as well. I mean, Splyce look like this a lot of the time. They look like you just can't stop them, and it's by the thinnest of margins. Aurora gets out with 80 HP, or Venenu and working together with SOT just barely have enough damage with the Spirit Flail World Weaver combo. I mean, it feels like they're at these thin margins, but it works out for them.
I used to call it the pon-pon luck way back in the day when a support or a jungler would get out by the skin of their teeth, but it might just now in 2019 be called the Aurora luck.
Yeah.
But there's nothing lucky about that. It's when opportunity meets preparation, and Aurora is certainly prepared for all of those escapes.
I agree. Splyce have engineered these scenarios more times than not, and then they take full advantage of them when they are presented. And we're now in this Phoenix Seed stage. I know SK have struggled up until now, but they have this thought. They have the Fear No Evil there for Unbots. Their Phoenix defense actually still pretty good.
I agree with you, but their items can't really stack up to that of Splyce. So as long as Splyce can make it very chaotic in the backline to disrupt the synergy from SK Gaming, it still should be kind of clean here. They need to rely on a lot of these blinks, and all 3 frontliners have it available.
SK Gaming have to hedge their bets here. A wipe will spell the end of the game, so they have to play conservatively. World Weaver onto Paul. Aurora there to wait out the beads, but can't find the driving strike. That's Fear No Evil forced out, as well as the Phoenix already half. Final Judgment brings Aurora down quite low, and Zapman gets the kill, but they lose the left side Phoenix.
And that's all Splyce wanted. Now very happy to run away using the Blizzard, still trying to get away from Paul's route, jumping over his Solar Troll, going into the backline is Belair.
Cyclone Spin turns things around, but I think SK Gaming have a pretty good fight here on their hands. Venenu is quite low, but Scream finds the execute. Fatal Strike to reposition. Neil shuts him down, though, so it's 2 against 2 that are left standing. But SOT does too much damage. I don't think Paul can get in range.
No, I definitely don't think so either. Good taunt into the route. SOT, no access to the ultimate, trying to turn it around, using the tether to buy time for Venenu to make this counter rotation.
Yeah, Ven's back in, and Solar Troll used the Glad Shield well to heal back up during that fight. Paul couldn't quite burn him down in time, even with Neil's help. So it ends up being 3 for 3 at the end of it, but Splyce get that left side Phoenix, and they'll have time to farm up a little bit on the map, spend their gold, and come back for this next FG.
Paul really can't catch a break, because in that last team fight, that World Weaver was intended for Zap, but it actually clips out Paul there to start it off, forcing an early beats. But Zapman doing a good job killing Aurora there as well. Final Judgment, not through the Glyph of Pain, but it was still enough with the Hieroglyphic Assault afterwards to get the support out of the equation.
They were willing to commit quite a bit to punish Aurora on that dive. I wonder if that is going to be a winning formula for them going forward, because Aurora's happy to take a couple of ultimates on the chin.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with you there. If you can eat a Final Judgment to allow Cyclone Spin and Venenu to get consistent DPS off, I'll take that trade every day of the week.
And I'm certain that Aurora would as well. Fire Giant now 30 seconds away. No relics for Venenu, so if there is a scuffle, he could certainly be a bit vulnerable in that one for another full minute. Same for Cyclone Spin. He had to use all his relics as well. So if SK want to step up, I wouldn't be too disappointed, but they got to defend the most important Phoenix, the left side one, and push up the wave, so it's not an easy call.
Can we talk about Scream's build real quick here? Soul Eater, I think, last item before boots are going to get sold off eventually with the Hydra's Lament. This is like that one-shot build that I used to see him running and ranked all the time with Achilles when the damage from the masks, the Rangda's mask build was a thing, and it was just so much burst damage.
Yeah, Scream wants to blow you up with this build, and it's certainly going to work. It is the Soul Eater that rounds that out, but I don't think anything else comes out of the Bound Gauntlet, so we knew. But Scream on this Achilles has been a real nightmare this game. He hasn't chained the executes together a ton, but I don't think he's needed to. He's used them to cut down some key targets so they don't have to overcommit for kills, and it's really just been a strong game from the whole team.
One of the best ways to determine how effective your jungler is in a Smite game is his kills and assists compared to your team's total kills. At this rate, Scream's at 75% kill participation, and he's looking very dominant on the Achilles. With a less than conventional build, sure, but I think it's more about the style of his team on the battleground.
Scream to lead Sam for Soccer again.
Maybe it is the build.
Yeah, maybe it is. I mean, that's so much damage. Sam just barely got the ultimate off there and had to use the bead, so that should help confirm this Fire Giant. But Neil and Belair want to be here for the defense. So is Zapman. This is so risky, but Splyce confirmed the FG,
no.
and SK might have overcommitted trying to defend.
Oh, here comes one blink.
Beats.
Where's the other one? Scream used a blink earlier on. Okay, Aurora looking for the stun for a little bit. Excavate onto Zap as well. Scream not able to really help out as he's clearing out the wave. Paul actually goes into Scream.
It has Defender of Olympus channeled, so he will be able to make it back out of there, but that was an aggressive play from him. Cyclone Spin now joining the fray as Aurora pulls one more member back. It's Belair who has to retreat. I think that was Kingslayer used defensively. That's why he comes back in, but Mantle of Discord stuns 4.
Oh my goodness, that's so annoying. Middle Phoenix goes down to under 50% health because right side Phoenix is in more jeopardy. Scream should be able to walk away there. Solar Patrol taking a lot of damage.
Aurora is in the center of all that damage. We got a little bit of help from Cyclone Spin. All 3 Phoenixes are up right now for SK Gaming. That's not too bad, but they're all in rough shape. Left, middle, and right, all at about half or lower.
All 5 members stand strong from SK. Final Judgment available off of the taunt. Aurora just going to shrug that one off very casually.
Yeah, that is optimistic at best. If they were hoping that Spear of Deso and Divine Ruin be enough to chuck through everything Aurora's got. Not at this point. And they used the taunt everything on that one. So it was this design play. It just wasn't going to be enough.
Ooh, Neilmaw going to get stunned. Mid-dash as well. The Tether going to stun him out for the second time, but SOT falls first.
That was a nice combo for Splyce, and they weren't able to do anything during that time, so the Phoenix doesn't even take any additional damage. SK finally hold on a bit with that Fear No Evil and stop Splyce in their tracks.
This is the kind of CC we were mentioning here.
Right.
It's not just the damage out of Zap from a distance. You got taunt from Neil, the root from Paul. Zapman's going to be able to root you as well if you overstep. Sanford Soccer can dissect the team fight to save your frontliner that's going to go in for Splyce. But if I'm Splyce here, I'm going to be able to try to all-in blink. Get all 3 of my frontliners into this backline, not allowing Zap the freedom to cast.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised they didn't split the map there and instead took that full 5-on-5. They had Scream threatening right Phoenix by himself, but they just rotated everybody over so SK could set up their defense on the right side. Splyce is certainly in control still, certainly playing this one well, but just a little bit of a concern because SK are a very strong defensive team.
Definitely with the Thoth and the Chernobog. They tried to split it between middle and right, but it would have been probably better to do middle and the left side, seeing how that's the weakened Phoenix, right? At a respawn time there wasn't that wave with Splyce that they can use to their advantage, and I think that's why Scream went to the right instead.
Well, there you go, as this next Fury is spawning in. They should have another minute after this with which to work with this Fire Giant. The Oni waves won't be with them when they push, but that should help them in terms of splitting focus when they go over to try and grab the FG.
Splyce feeling very confident to just keep pushing forward now. SK Gaming were successful in their first defense, need to still use that as a 6th man advantage because they definitely can't stack up to them to Splyce rather with the gold or the experience, so need some outside forces.
Looks like they'll only have time for about one push with the Fire Giant buff on everyone except SOT. Scream is pushing down the middle lane. Relic's up for everyone as well. This is a full-on fight. Aurora blinks in. It's just like you wanted. Right to the back line. They push Zapman away, but still no damage onto the actual Phoenix just yet. Frenzy popped now on the SK Gaming side, and Zapman has had all day to start channeling some damage, but Final Judgment never comes through.
And the Phoenix still survives just barely. Belair sacrificing himself to shoo Splyce away. Neilma was tanking all those shots from Venenu to the last possible moment. I love it. And a very small note to make was Zapman being targeted from that World Weaver. Neilma intercepts it accidentally, intentionally, I don't know, but that initial stun, diminishing return.
Blink, two-man taunt brings Aurora into the Final Judgment and a kill for Zapman. Splyce may have finally started to overstay their welcome here on the left-hand side.
The biggest difference between that Final Judgment and the last one is the Obsidian Shard.
Yep.
It was just now purchased.
And that's why he was able to kick down the door and blow up Aurora. Paul looking for Solar Troll on the left-hand side. Finds him there too. Splyce, they might have twiddled their thumbs for a little bit too long. SK Gaming are starting to get back into this one.
As long as they don't casually lose to their Phoenix on the left side, I think they need to shove that out with how dangerously low it is. So yes, this is the comeback SK Gaming needed. They're still down a lot of gold. Fire Giant is due to respawn. SK Gaming might even try to offer a Solar Troll dead for 35 or Aurora for 15.
And really, it felt like Splyce just can't quite get into the actual Phoenix range. They can zone away Zapman, but Sam's Fear No Evil is too strong of a zoning tool.
It really is, and then Belair's presence in the backline as well with his
Right.
Kingslayer, all those clones and the skewers, such a short cooldown.
Wow, they are going for it. SK have already started up this FG, and I don't even know that Splyce recognized it. They're not going to be able to get in. SK Gaming were down 10,000 gold with multiple Phoenixes wounded. Instead, they've turned it around and grabbed an FG for themselves.
I think Splyce knew about it. They just didn't want to walk into an ambush. Like, look at the warding situation. Splyce put 2 sentry wards at the blue buff, at the back camps, and didn't want to go past that little invisible line. So conceding the Fire Giant buff intentionally, trying to see if SK Gaming are going to be risky enough to push.
SK Gaming likely won't with this. It'll probably just be a Fire Giant used for defense until they can close out the gap. But look at these builds. They're getting closer and closer to fully built. An Assassin's Blessing still for Sam, Guardian's Blessing still for Neil, but for the most part, they're getting there.
And something I saw during the Fire Giant buff, like right before it was started, was Scream purchased a 3k power potion, and he used it. So his one-shot potential just now skyrocketing. If you're wanting to buy some stocks of Splyce's damage, buy now.
I don't know if SK Gaming know that Splyce are lurking here in the wings. Neil is able to disengage successfully, so the little
I think they knew.
sneaky play didn't quite work.
I think they knew. The blink into the counter blink, yeah, that was read like a book. Neilma now trying to be on the chase.
Wow, SK Gaming want this fight. That's a Fear No Evil, and it does get the beads out from Scream at the very least. And we were asking, are SK Gaming going to be willing to push? Well, here's your answer. They certainly are.
They definitely are. I think they were trying to burn some beads during that Fear No Evil. It doesn't look like they caught any. Cyclone Spin
screens.
had his beads down, actually, so he couldn't even use it.
Certainly could not in that last fight. Another potion being bought by Cyclone Spin for this next fight. He's already sold off his boots at this point, so potions are his only power spike left. Though his relics could be upgraded. That wouldn't hurt.
Surely wouldn't hurt at all. Popping that 500 gold potion with 10% CDR. Surprised not to see more CDR items on Cyclone Spin in general. He's going for a very offensive power build, which I actually enjoy seeing out of a Merlin. When you have such an aggressive front line, you just need one rotation of abilities with all that CC follow-up.
Rotation does have to be perfect. Want to point out Venenu, the only person on the map who has not fallen just yet. 4-0-8 for this Neath for him. He's had a really safe and strong game supporting his team. Bought this Odysseus' bow to help his damage spread throughout the fights a little bit more. They got to find a way to get him onto the actual Phoenixes, though.
And that amount of attack speed is great at clearing Phoenixes. When you have that much physical power, a little bit of penetration from Brawler's Speed Stick, and also the Heartseeker, that's going to go a long way towards getting those objectives.
That's right, the Titan's Bane, those percent penalties obviously don't help you in the actual structures, But as you mentioned, the Heartseeker will indeed allow him to do that. We said SK Gaming were going to push, but they didn't actually end up doing it. They just pushed the left wave up as far as they felt comfortable, and they're going to reset. So this game could very well be decided on this next Fire Giant Tully, where both teams should feel pretty comfortable coming out of their base and fighting around the objective.
Seems that Splyce is interested in pushing the right side of the map. That's a huge wave of melee minions and archers, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody's going to have to play defense.
Someone is going to have to come back and at least stop them from doing some damage to the Phoenix. SK Gaming are pushed up, though, on the left-hand side. These two teams are ships passing in the night, and SK are going to push up this mid-wave. That should suck Splyce back, and it certainly does. Look at all those backs from them. They know they have to get here and set up a defense. Only another 30 seconds on the FG buff.
Roar, not worried about getting caught out there, having so much health available.
He was on a ward. Neil blinks in. It's a full-on commit to take down Aurora, and he can't make it out. SK Gaming, they recognized where he was, and they turned on a dime. Now it's a 5v4.
All right, I thought he was going to be okay with his tankiness. Apparently, I was gravely mistaken. He was way too far out of position that time around, and now it's up to Splyce to play defense. 4-on-5, SK Gaming no longer with access to the Fire Giant buff.
That's right, it is going to fall off, and Zatman's the early target. They blow him up instantly. Two-man stun from Neil, but the execute from Scream. That's a double. Over on the left-hand side, Sam and Belair at least want the Phoenix to try and make this worth it, but they won't even get that. Sam for Soccer is going to fall as well. Splyce have found a way to answer back. That's a delayed triple for Scream.
That was so sloppy from not only Aurora, but then SK after the fact. Entering the Phoenix before the minions was Sam for Soccer. There was no aggro that he got from hitting any enemy god there. And as a result, dies to the last hit of a Titan. Very unfortunate for him. And now Splyce with a 5-on-2. They have the door completely wide open. They have two doors, Fire Giant or the middle Phoenix, maybe three with a Titan.
This is such a difficult push, though, for Splyce. Two members to defend from SK and no real minions for Splyce to take down these backdoor protections. But I don't know that it matters. They're shredding the middle Phoenix. Paul and Belair have got to find some kind of way to keep the game going. 8 seconds until Zatman's back up. This will not be a free end for them at all. But they're burning through the Titan. It's below half already. Belair only gets 1 kill, but Splyce shut the game down in 37 minutes.
Great call out of Splyce there to recognize with Zatman dead, that burst damage completely avoided. They just walk right past the middle Phoenix, get the Titan in that late game. And I like that too because they know who the defender from SK was. That Thoth was a big thorn on their side.
But man, SK are going to be kicking themselves. That pick onto Aurora was huge. He was too far out of position, sitting right on top of a ward. They certainly knew that he was there.
Yes.
And with the 5v4, they should have been able to push. But you're right, it was sloppy. Zatman gets blown up right away. I mean, that's just not how that has to go.
See, Aurora teamed with Zatman before in the past, and he's all too well familiar with the tactical feeding strategy.
Yeah,
so
good point.
that put SK in a false sense of security. I can't do this bit anymore, I'm sorry.
Maybe they got a little bit too excited after getting that pick there onto Aurora. Splyce now up 2-1. We'll see game 4 after this.
INAP, powering the control room for the SMITE Pro League.
Stage is set. Let's get down for esports!
This is where we also talk about the new stuff that we've got coming out for you all.
HRX is literally my favorite time of year. It truly isn't close. This is what I live for.
It's that second place. I can't wait to see what first place is.
It's HRX.
You see the advert? Yeah, go do it. Harris Expo tickets are on sale now. The World Championships are right around the corner. Get them. Come see me and Ryan. We'll be casting some of these games too, potentially. Depends if he's got a voice left after the screaming he made after Splyce's performance there in Game 3.
That was a big win for him, both in the Game 3 where I lost my voice up against Team Dignitas in the semifinals last year, and
Forgot
the win
about that bit.
right now.
That was funny.
Yeah, that was pretty good. That you covered both angles. Look, Splyce was in control. Game over. Right.
No.
Wrong. Then Solo Patrol gets picked. SK gets a Fire Giant, and all of a sudden it's SK sieging. They blow not everything, but quite a bit in order to kill Aurora when he's out of position in the right side jungle. Blink from Neil, blink Fear No Evil from Sam for Soccer, and they get the kill onto Aurora, but that leaves Scream free to win the game for his team. 12-1 on this Achilles. He played so well on this selection on a pick that we haven't seen in the jungle for a long, long time. That is the Scream special right there, is to make plays on a god that no one else is playing and make a huge difference with it.
I will say, from Splyce's point of view and what I've seen from Splyce this year, they just want to fight you. Like, it don't matter where, it don't matter when, they just want to scrap.
Yep.
And they're happy to do that with any god, but to be fair, most of the gods they pick are good for scrapping with.
Yeah, I mean, that's when your whole team is really good at scrapping, why wouldn't you want to do it?
Yeah.
You know, that's the way I look at it. If we feel like we can out-team fight anybody or out-fight anybody, why wouldn't we stick with that game plan? And they certainly did, and really, really impressive stuff. It took them a little bit longer than they should have, and saw some mistakes for sure, but there was that exact thing I was talking about but in the picks and bans. Scream pre-pops the 2, he has a 3K offense pot, auto attack 1, Zapman dead.
Love to see it. I mean, not the Zapman dead thing, but, you know, the play on Scream and the Achilles Solo Troll on your screen. His reaction after a good, well-earned victory in game number 3. The flashy pink boys are back on the screen. I've got to say, their outfits are fantastic.
Cleanest fit in the game, for sure. They've definitely got the best one.
They got a game tomorrow, too?
I believe they do.
So what do? Do they wear the same clothes tomorrow? Do they have to go home and wash them in time? Do they get spares in the wardrobe? Is that what happens?
I don't know. Maybe they have an extra. I'd imagine they have an extra jersey.
What are the pants and shoes and things? Like, the socks are going to match as well.
Yeah, I mean, they'll probably wear the same. I mean, it's like sweatpants. You could probably go 2 days on those. It's not a big deal.
That's true. Funny story, Bart once upon a time wore the same shirt for an entire split.
And no one noticed.
And nobody in the world noticed.
Well, that's just because it's Bart, man. I mean, he gets to do what he wants.
He does. I'm going to attempt that one day.
Really?
Yeah. You know when?
When?
When my washing machine breaks.
I mean, is that going to happen? Is it like a foregone conclusion? You have a really old one?
I hope not, but you'll just slowly see the whiff of the faces of my co-casters. I stink up the place everywhere I go.
Yeah, that won't be ideal.
Business as usual then, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Now, on to Splyce then, having a little long talk amongst themselves for this next game. Picks and bans coming up, obviously, when we talk towards the picks and bans now. Seeing some set get through, Persephone slip through here or there. She seems to be getting banned again, though. What adjustments are we expecting to see from SK now? Because I feel like they've been just doing what Splyce have wanted them to. Yeah,
I mean, game 1, they get Persephone set, and the game feels over because Paul gets Persephone. I don't think that'll happen again. I can't imagine that if they value it that highly and they've seen what it can do in Paul's hands, that they're particularly keen to give that over to Cyclone Spin or Venenu. So I think Persephone will stay banned. I'd be surprised if SK move away from the set for Bel Air. SK is a team that is usually pretty stubborn with what they want to do in picks and bans. They'll stick to it pretty heavily, make a couple adjustments elsewhere, but those top few picks I think are going to stay pretty similar. Maybe we see Paul go to something like AMC or On Her.
If he gets through.
Yeah, if either of those get through. I don't think that if given the opportunity, SK will not first pick set. I'd be surprised if they let it through.
SK Gaming then with the first pick option here. We'll see what they decide to go with. Hercules first off the cards, and I think that's 3 games in a row we saw Aurora on it, so why not ban it?
Yeah, basically every team gets to this point where they go, I don't want to play against this anymore.
I'm just sick of seeing him on it, yeah. So then it goes to Kumba, is normally next on the list, right?
Yes, that is definitely one
And
that
then
you can
Artio.
expect. Probably Artio, yep.
And then Erlang Shen.
Could be Erlang. I mean, I'm sure
Reflex,
if you have been playing like 3 gods all split, that means that you can spend all of your practice practicing different gods, right? Like you should have a bunch in the pocket. It's
true.
Because you haven't had to show any of them yet. I think that makes sense to me.
AMC banned away by SK Gaming, funny enough. They believe they may be able to get a different priority pick by banning that. A lot of talk about AMC, though. Has he really fallen from grace with the nerfs? The pros are still valuing him at the moment.
Seems like it. I don't think we saw a whole lot of AMC bans in the first set of the day.
I feel like this is a kind of a leftover, leftover situation where AMC should be drifting away here from this banning stage as time goes on.
I don't disagree. This is the usual thing, we still ban him because we think he might still be good.
Yeah.
All right, we'll start to let him through and see if he's any good. Turns out he's not that good. We won't ban him or pick him. That's kind of the way it goes.
Set. Persephone, all not available for this one. Only one that's still around here that I can think of is probably the Anher or the Thor are the two that are kind of a possibility for either team.
Circuit ban. Splyce has been pretty consistent with that. I'd expect a first pick Thor here from SK just because of how well Solo Retrol played on that pick, and it's a great pick for Sam. He's won a lot of games for SK with it. I think this is the right direction to go.
What do you think about Hachiman support for SK, out of interest?
I know it's a Neilma specialty, for sure. He talked a lot about how good it is on roll queue, which you can find on the SMITE Pro YouTube. I think that I would request to go home now and let you solo the post-set desk because the set would be over.
I think if Neilmar heard that conversation, he'd lock it in this instant.
Almost certainly, yes.
Just for the memes.
And he might just mess around and win on it.
Olaron is back into play, though, for Splyce. More than likely for Cyclone Spin this game in that dual lane. Horus is going to be the selection for Aurora here. I love this warrior. I think he's always something that he's almost a true support.
Yep.
It's really what he is.
And it's perfect for Aurora, isn't it? It's in your face, it's mobile, it's
you
frustrating.
Frustrate you.
Yep, that's exactly what he likes. So SK is going to go with one that's very much the same in Kumbhakarna to try and match Neil with that. And Neil had a great start to that game. They kept Scream at level 1 for a solid 2 minutes. And normally that's a great sign for success. But then the early kills going the way of Splyce in the mid lane for the second game in a row makes it difficult.
Very interesting tale so far with Anher and Thor both going the way of SK. They were both previously banned or picked up by Splyce. Olaron, though, is one that definitely came around again, and the Chiron once more for Venenu in the mid lane here.
Like it.
CC immunity is the reason again?
CC immunity on the ultimate and the cleanse on the 1 certainly gets rid of all that telegraphed CC by Kumbhakarna. Really, really easy to get rid of that root. The mesmerize if it's on a teammate. You can even pre-mez, you can pre-cleanse yourself on that mez. Tight timing window, but certainly possible.
Surprised by the Jingwei ban by Splyce there. Anher already locked in for SK. And if SK were to take another Hunter in this game, they're going to be very physical heavy and have to potentially rely on their, solo jungle to go magical.
Smart.
That Thor would have to go to solo if that was the case.
It was a really smart Morrigan ban by Splyce. Take that out of Zapman's hands. That is a magical god that is certainly in the cards for him. Couple Thoth bans and that kind of stuff earlier on,
I
but
did not agree with that at all. He's like,
the classic. Dude,
I can play Morrigan here.
We've definitely seen that Zapman face a million times. I love arrogant Zap. It's the best. It's the best. I absolutely love it, and I love this pick for Solo Retrol. Tyr has some struggles, I think, at times against Thor with that inability to knock him up or pull him while he's using that Berserker's Barrage with your Fearless, but Solo Retrol, this fits his playstyle. A little surprised it doesn't go the way of the Osiris because he played it so well these last few games, but wanting to go with something a little bit different this time around.
Chronos viable at the moment still?
Yeah, I think SK could go Chronos here and have it be okay.
Oh, Hebo, okay. I was definitely looking
Interesting.
magical and you're looking for high damage or maybe good scaling into the late game. Hebo Chronos both do the same sort of thing.
I like the Hebo up against the Chiron. Masterful shot, gets a big buff, slows more heavily in the late game. Now you can give yourself or your team slow immunity with that Water Carpet.
Oh, the phone though. Is that Paul on Hebo? Hang on a second.
Oh, could be. That's a good point. That is a very good point.
Do you really take it away from the Master?
It probably not. Plus, I feel like Anher has really good solo potential against Olaron. I mean, how does Olaron handle your 1? How does he handle shifting sands? He doesn't. He doesn't do it very well.
I mean, how does he handle Hebo knockups? And
That
slows too.
But
right?
then if he gets close enough to water cannon you can step into him, consecrate away,
Or you
and
could,
then
you could field him as well,
Right.
slow him down, and then Anher, meanwhile, could just Desert Fury.
exactly
Yeah.
Desert Fury through the whole thing. I feel like I would actually prefer it that way. Put Paul on the Habois
Yeah.
and give the Anher over. And Scream goes to the Awilix. This is a pick that Splyce as an Aurora team had a staple of last year. This is a pick, they love these combos in their draft. Horus and Tyr both with knockups. Even Chiron, by the way, with the 3. It's the tiniest window, but
It's
it
a good
could
window.
work. That's a real test to see Venenu and Scream synergy. But Anher with the leap, wherever this Anher goes, he's going to be seeing a lot of Scream.
Did anything change with Awilix to bring her back? Because we've talked about Awilix for a while, how she could be competitively viable in this sort of meta, but we've not seen her still. And then all of a sudden, just started to come out the same week.
A little bit. I mean, it's just it's a comfort pick for Scream. He's played it a lot during his career. You've got a couple knockups on your side, and on her you can kill with ease on the other side. I think that's the main reason we see Awilix more than any one item buff or sort of meta change.
Gotcha. Because that's always interesting. If did the Heartseeker do something that allowed her to come into play? I don't think so.
I mean, she does well with
necessarily.
Transcendence builds because her scaling is good, and she gets a bunch of attack speed during her ultimate, so you don't need to build into that. You can really hit it really hard with that extra power in that ultimate as well. It probably not a big deal with the Heartseeker. I think it's just the pick.
We're going 5 games?
I don't think so.
Okay, Finch, totally. Take away game 4. Whether he doesn't think so, will be the 5th.
Well, if I live my life based on the things Aggro thought, it'd be a miserable life. I try my best to avoid it. We are in game number 4. Finch and Anatoly still here, and Scream certainly is on this Awilix pick, one that he's very comfortable on. But as Ryan said, that there's not a lot of others who play this same pick. But I think he has a chance to make a lot of noise on this pick this game.
I definitely agree with you. I think Zatman on the Habois, Paul on the Anher, they are still aggressive players by nature, so there's doesn't really matter what god they get. Just mix and match it, right? It's just like you have a couple of shirts in your closet. It's just whatever you're feeling on that day, I guess.
Certainly, whatever's clean. Throw that one on as SK could be in a bit of trouble. An early rotation from Aurora over the left-hand side. What's this then? We have a little bit of duo lane for once. I wouldn't hate it. Neil and Aurora fighting with pillows in the jungle, and they'll head over to the lane for some actual duo laning.
But they're just gonna zone each other away? What?
Come on, please just let me have it, guys. Stop this hitting each other for 11. There's no need.
Like, Cyclone Spin is still getting solo farm. Aurora's not close enough, I think, to soak up that experience, whereas I believe Neilma was... Oh, sorry, they're all both 0 experience per minute, so neither of them getting experience. Just kind of wasting time.
Why are they doing this?
Get it.
I guess they're both over here, and why not? And I don't know. I mean, this current
Is
support...
that man smiling? He's like, what's going on?
it's so ridiculous nowadays what these supports get up to. Aurora is going to try and stop them from doing their purple buff at the very least. I mean, this is maybe some light steal potential, mostly just harass to see if he can get in there and strip it away. Had the stun timing, and he actually gets it. Aurora's a madman.
Zatman with a slight chuckle as well. Neilma is even smiling. He's like, we can't do anything about it. Cyclone Spin gets his own purple as
blink.
well.
He might put himself in some
He's
trouble
fine.
with this. Okay,
Nah, he's fine.
He's gonna leave. Good call. Yeah, this is Aurora effectively using his time. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, you just stripped away a lot of experience and even a purple buff. It is, what, 10 flat protection shred and then 5% on top of it. Zatman gonna get knocked up here as well, taking a lot of damage.
Yeah, they both are, and this is something that Olorin can do when he has someone in lane with him. He has a ton of damage that only needs a little bit of confirm. Scream probably not gonna be able to kill anyone under their tower, so
no
likely
blink.
just soaking farm.
Yeah, no blink as well. It's on cooldown for about 30 seconds. I like the idea of him making that presence there. No red buff to steal either. I believe he was spotted by those wards.
Maybe so, because suddenly SK started hugging the tower and it worked out for them. Man, I just can't get over it, man. We got a Hunter and a Guardian over here hanging out in the long lane like they're supposed to.
I mean, as Hunter as you can get, right?
Right.
Habois and Oloron on this side of the map, but sure, yeah. Now it's on the solo lane side. SOT getting the better end of Belair. This is the one problem of Amaterasu in the early game. You don't have the same sustain compared to a Tyr.
So you are going to struggle a little bit here in the early game as Neoma is done with this long lane nonsense. He doesn't play like it's Season 5 any longer. He took his back, and he's now back to stealing away the mid laner's farm. Look at this. For a little bit, Paul and Ven are ahead of Zap and Cyclone Spit.
Would you look at that? But looking at Solar Troll positioning for a blue buff invade, forcing a rotation from Sam for Soccer and Paul.
Was that the impale already there on the scream? Yeah, he didn't jump off Suku, so it must have been. That takes away a lot of the scariness of this as Solar Troll blinks in. Doesn't find anyone with the Fearless, and blue buff defended by the Order side team. Sam, though, I believe did have to use the Purification Bead, so a bit of a win for Splyce.
There's no hammer as well. Could be in a little bit of trouble. Gets rooted into place.
Feather Step, but Solar Troll gonna take a second tower shot. He had way too much health. That's first blood for Scream and for Splyce.
Great Feather Step as well. I believe that was used even before the second hit. Normally you want to use 2 basic attacks and then Feather Step for the root, but there are times where you don't have that window to guarantee the most optimal DPS, and it's better to just get the little mini root off so you can position yourself for more basic attacks and your teammates to follow up.
And I know this wasn't necessarily about the supports, but what they all have been telling me whenever we interview them or take some time to talk to them is that small mistakes in the early game in this meta can really, really hurt you. And that's such a difficult fight to navigate if you're Sam for Soccer, when to find your timings, when you're supposed to back out of that one. And he does eventually end up getting caught. That's first blood for Splyce, and Scream now a little bit ahead.
And that's rough to give a Willix that kind of a window to start running away with it. Hurting Sam for Soccer's Anvil of Dawn timing gets Cyclone Spin in a more safe window, I think, of comfort, as he's still being a bully onto Zapman, not having to use that much mana compared to the Habwa, I think gives Cyclone Spin more of an advantage.
He also has the Shoes of Focus finished already. I imagine that start helped out where he got a little bit of extra farm denied the way of Zapman that he was able to get, so he can even fight a little bit more. Zapman was able to take a little bit of extra time in base to finish his boots, but he's going to miss out on some farm.
I think the proxy between Tier 1 and Tier 2 a little bit too ambitious for Solar Troll. He's just going to be A-okay, having Scream right around the corner.
He should still be okay. In fact, there's 3 members of Splyce here a little bit sooner. Dazzling Offensive will force the Lawbringer, and Solar Troll still clings to life just barely. Neil can't close the gap, and somehow Solar Troll makes it out.
If Neil had Epic Uppercut, he would have definitely used it there just for the base damage. Even if you are CC immune, there's still a little bit of damage there. I like the presence of Mind to try to kill the tier, but man, SOT is fully aware of how much damage he can take using that ultimate right at the very last second.
Yeah, that was well timed from Solar Troll. And now Belair is actually in trouble. What a turnaround this could be if they're able to catch up, but he's going to run towards backup. I think Belair might have just done enough.
Oh, no,
no,
the
a blink from Scream. That's not going to work. Epic Uppercut stops him in the middle of his tracks, but in comes the on-her damage. Solar Troll does eventually find Belair, but now Neil's in trouble.
It's Venenu there
Good
that
wall.
got the shots off with the Centaurus ultimate. A great rotation coming from this level 7 Chiron.
I do think Sam got a little bit of that wall over the wall, so to speak, and that slight changing in pathing might have helped towards the tail end, but totally, I mean, SOT and the rest of Splyce, they're on a tightrope over here on the right-hand side of the map, and it's been working.
It's got to be feeling really bad to see your own wave getting proxied between Tier 1 and Tier 2 at level 6 tier, mind you, and that you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
You're using the Anvil of Dawn, you used your Dazzling Offensive, the tier gets away, and then I get punished as a result. There's no justice in this world, Finch.
I agree, man. They're just straight up no justice. That's that Aurora luck, even when it's not directly happening to him. And obviously, like we said, it's in jest. You know, they're making all these plays, but it does feel like Splyce are so willing to ride these margins so narrow and still come out on top.
Still looking a little bit grim for Zapman. He can't really win the health or the mana sustain. Cyclone Spin has the advantage of just basic attacking at this point, but Zapman has kill potential if Cyclone Spin steps up too far once Zap hits level 9, having 2 points in that crushing wave.
I do also want to say, Hinderman gave a laundry list of other supports that Aurora could play and never really mentioned Horus. Crushing Wave is a good answer, though, from Zapman, but he's still stuck inside the damage, and Sam just doesn't get there in time. Cyclone Spin might even be able to win the trade. No, the wall from Sam too good. It ends up being 1-for-1.
That was very close. He was dead to rights there, so he tries to get off any damage he could.
Root coming out from Neomon, but the rest of the squad keeps going. Venenu goes into the Centaurus, and that's enough damage for them to find the kill here onto Neil as well. The pressure now relentless from Splyce.
This is a very quick game with a lot of kills. Splyce trying to just get this kind of momentum. We saw what they were able to do in the last game when they got these early kills, how they were able to control certain objectives. Somebody from SK is going to need to start making those plays, but when everything is going wrong in every lane, it's kind of hard to do that. Even with the global pressure from Sam for Soccer, Zapman not able to really deliver that final blow without dying.
That's a great point. It's felt like somehow SK are the ones getting out-rotated, even with this Thor. It's because Splyce, like you said, have the matchups going in their favor just about everywhere, which does mean even with more rotational power, it feels like you're behind. It's just been a really strong early game from Splyce so far, netting them a 2,000 gold lead.
And this global pressure from Aurora is going to be a factor as well. Catching up to Neilmon, that last kill was a good way to extend the advantage. Getting the Oracles now is SK gaming, and boy, do they need vision.
And it's a gank now onto Belair. The CC chain is strong. Dazzling offensive, not going to be enough. What a perfect combination there between Scream and Solar Troll.
This is the mechanics being put on full display out of Splyce. Solar Troll on the Thor in game number 3, going, what, 12, 1, and 6, something like that. And then the last game of Scream's Achilles, something similar of a slash line. And now you get the two frontliners ganking out Belair, his second death now, and that's Amaterasu. You can't afford to be that far behind. Your team needs to use your levels for that movement speed utility.
From that passive aura on that first ability, and now instead Belair starting to struggle a little bit here in the solo lane as Scream and Solar Troll work together for another pick. And Scream is still a bit behind because Sam's been able to farm a bit more. Scream's been actively ganking around. But look at every other matchup. Everyone else is ahead, and Scream's only given up about half a level to do it.
This is Splyce just being confident in every single lane. A full combo from this level 10 tier, by the way, is putting Amaterasu at 50% health. It's no surprise as to why a little bit of an extra shove out of Scream sealed his fate.
Last time, even backing up a little bit so that the Awilix pull will pull him as far back as possible towards the enemy tower. Just a whole bunch of stuff done to min-max. But Sam wants to get active here on the left-hand side. Cyclone spin. Won't get hit by the dunk, but will get hit by the wall in a two-man stun. But they drop the Sanctified Field. Crushing Wave is good for the turnaround, but Cyclone Spin gets the first kill. Aurora's on his way to this at the Horus ultimate and gets there in time. Cyclone Spin survives for a moment, eventually ends up falling, but that's a 3-for-1 in favor of Splyce.
You couldn't ask for much more out of Splyce, with the exception of Cyclone Spin surviving. Splyce could probably go for this objective, but keep in mind, Paul is very healthy. Level 10 on her with the red buff. That Desert Fury has steal potential, so instead, Splyce just going to soak up the farm.
I am a bit surprised as well they don't go for that Gold Fury. I know that they didn't have Cyclone Spin, but they've got Venenu on the Chiron, and they certainly could have threatened it, but playing it safe rarely ends up hurting you, and Splyce just take their advantage and leave.
Yet again, just now finishing off the Warrior's Blessing is Belair. 10.5 minutes in, he's just always one step behind.
And now he's being ganked yet again. He still has Dazzling Offensive, and he's going to have to force his way into it, but it still isn't enough. Even the Lawbringer was there if needed. Another pick in the right lane.
I love it. Scream uses Feather Step on the first hit of Dazzling Offensive, covering the distance, avoids the stun on the third hit with the Suku. Lawbringer as well, avoiding that stun. These two frontliners out of Splyce, making it impossible for Belair to breathe.
Now, 0-3-0 on Amaterasu just isn't the look. He has struggled here this game. And I mean, and you can't even ask Sam to rotate over to help. Sam was just ganking in the long lane, and that didn't even work. That ended up being a 3-for-1 trade in favor of Splyce. So there is no real relief to come over there and help out Belair.
No, definitely not. Solar Troll able to strip away that blue buff, pulling it away even.
Scream now active in the middle lane, gets the beads from Paul. That is the epic uppercut from Neil. But Venenu, masterful shot available. It looks like it's not. So Paul won't be put to the test here this time.
Needed to connect that second hit at the very least, but instead will force him out to back. Venenu taking probably more damage than he bargained for. Sandman might be in trouble there with Scream right on his backside.
Has to use Crushing Wave, but Cyclone Spin reads it like a book, and Zapman ends up falling. And now SK starting to unravel. That game one where they were dominant, that's in the rearview mirror.
Unfortunately for SK, this is just sloppy play. That was basically a solo kill. Scream did literally nothing but be a cheerleader as he got there. Like, good job, Cyclone Spin, as Hatman was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. There's such a thing as overconfidence, and I think for Zapman, he didn't respect Cyclone Spin completely absorbing the crushing wave with the Aegis.
Which is great timing from him, and that is some of what Scream was able to do there. His Gold Fury does go down for Splyce, as I think he kind of forced Zap's hand a little bit earlier than he wanted. Belair, recognizing the futility of battling up against SOT, just backs his face. But yeah, I mean, Splyce have had complete control so far.
If I'm SOT there, I'm stopping the back every single time. But,
oh, totally.
But the blue buff was up, so I have to go get my blue buff first.
That's the only thing you'll accept instead, is going over there to get the blue.
Or the enemy's blue.
Yep, that could have been okay too. But I mean, I love seeing those kind of moments where Belair was like, I mean, I can't do much here anyway, so what difference does it make? But this has been clinical from Splyce this early game so far. The proxy from Solar Troll that he just barely is able to get away with, all these ganks on the long lane that Cyclone Spin's maximized his time in. It's been really perfect from them, and now it's Pyromancer time.
That's such a good point that you made. The proxying, I think, was the first step towards the success out of Splyce in this fourth game.
Pyromancer does go down for Splyce. Neil just barely able to disengage and make it back out of there. And so far, all the deaths have been onto Cyclone Spin, and it's come at such a cost. Well, apparently I jinxed Aurora, as that's a nice gank from SK to take down the Horus. Anvil of Dawn misses Venenu. He just walks out of there.
Scream thought it was going to go on him, so he uses the Purification Beads, anticipating that one. You ever, like, watch a scary movie, and you got, like, your hands in front of your face because you know a scary part is coming? That's kind of what Scream was doing with that relic. Once he heard the Thor sound, that's why he used it.
He said it wasn't going to be me. Belair knocked up, pulled into the tower, a perfect combination. And Belair falls for the fourth time this game.
Oh, no.
And now Paul's in some trouble too. Lawbringer sets up a double for Solar Troll.
There's so much setup from Splyce to allow Scream to pull anyone he wants. Solar Troll on the Fearless, or Venenu even with his dash, Aurora with the knockup, Cyclone Spin with the knockup, Splyce with a tier 1 mid, and they're not done yet.
It's just been an excellently executed drafting phase, and then in the game as the tier 2 tower falls before the 15-minute mark here in the middle lane. There just hasn't been much that SK Gaming could do, and this is a draft that I think should be able to be relevant in the early game.
And over here on the left lane, Zapman gonna be in a lot of trouble here.
And we oop, and they oop. Zapman in some trouble. And it's just a matter of who they want to give the kill to that time, and Scream's the one that gets that one. This is the most outclassed SK has looked all set. Up until now, it's at least felt competitive early or late, but this time Splyce are running over them.
Yeah, Splyce definitely having SK's number this time around. They read them a little bit there. The picks and bans was heavily changed out, realizing that Persephone was a big issue in game number 1 and also the set, so they kind of changed their idea there. Solar Troll might get a solo kill.
And he does. Sanford Soccer even uses the beads there in a futile effort.
I think that SK Gaming needs to go back to the drawing board to see how they can kind of change things up now, because if they do lose this game, they're going to lose the set, but outside of that, their chances of qualifying towards the Hi-Res Expo becomes that much more difficult. Their fate would no longer be in their own hands.
Belair in some trouble, dazzling offensive defensive yet again. For what it's worth, if they do fall down into the placement week, SK Gaming are by far the strongest team down there, I think. They probably won't have that much trouble qualifying out, but you never want to give an SML team a chance to catch you off guard, as the Fire Giants at half HP. Neil Ma way in the back line, but Fire Giants still being held on to by Splyce. They think they can grab this one and force in Belair, who doesn't have an ult.
No, but the frontliners out of SK have no real steal potential. You need Zapman, you need Paul potentially to be within the vicinity, maybe even Sanford Soccer with his Anvil of Dawn combo, but instead conceding that Fire Giant objective and to play defense against a Fire Giant team 16.5 minutes in is very difficult with this gold disparity.
Yes, this is a 10,000 deficit that SK Gaming are trying to punch through, and it's about to be made worse by this tier 2 tower. It's another 1,500 gold on the side of Splyce. They go right into the Horus ultimate so they can make the full-on dive underneath the Phoenix. SK won't even be here to defend.
With the arches as well, so it eliminates the backdoor's protections. The timing of that ultimate from Aurora, next level.
It absolutely was, man. I mean, watching Splyce play, it sometimes feels more like art than anything else when you watch really top-tier teams play this clinically. Rival does it sometimes, obviously Renegades, and then Splyce, I think, are right there with them.
And Sanford Soccer trying to do whatever he can with the split push. Doesn't even have a window to even get 500 gold for his teammates. Can't even get the red buff. Doesn't match the timing window. Splyce gonna kind of sniff him out with the Hound Dogs.
Yeah, this is bad news for Sanford Soccer. He doesn't even have B. He's got to ult defensively, and he is going to make it out of there at the very least. But Splyce can go knock on the door of those other Phoenix whenever they want. They'll get an Oni Fury first, and this wave will be relevant, so they have 2 minutes on FG when it starts pushing down the doors. That'll be a fire minion wave that's Oni'd on the right.
Yeah, if I'm SK Gaming, I'm trying to get farm anywhere I can. I feel like I'm in the desert, and I'm like looking for the water. That's why Paul, of all places, is at the enemy blue buff.
He is able to get some farm. They just want a crumb of farm if they can find it anywhere on the map at this point. As the tier 2 tower in left goes down. 5 members now of Splyce barreling down the left lane, and SK can barely hope to defend.
It's going to be a great stun onto a Roar, but the blinks are on.
This has been relentless from Splyce. Frenzy popped into the blink initiation. Neil Ma just barely survives, but Scream able to clean up Paul near the front line, and now they turn their attention to the Phoenix. It crumbles.
That damage was just a little bit too high for this level 14 on her. That, by the way, has an upgraded shell that he didn't use, and Sanford Soccer now on the backside. Didn't anticipate SOT.
Lawbringer reads Sanford Soccer. He falls. Neil Ma in the passive. He will be joining his comrades in the fountain. Belair tries to move in, does find a 2-man stun, but that's it for the mid-Phoenix.
SOT a little bit dirty there. Hesitates on the basic attack, stealing that away, or should I say secure it, as Splyce going to secure the set.
They do indeed secure the set. 3-1 in Splyce's favor. A dominant performance, and that's not the final nail in SK's coffin, but it might as well be for their hopes of auto-qualifying to HRX. A difficult path ahead of them now as Splyce are the strong team.
Yeah, Splyce definitely changing their facial expressions after losing that first game to now win 3 in a row. Whatever they discussed between that game certainly working out for them.
I imagine what they discussed was that we need to ban either Set or Persephone so they can't have both, or at least take one of Set or Persephone. And it looks like that worked for them. Now they're in a much better spot.
Definitely. And then it just allowing Scream to play whatever he wants, right? The Willish last game, the Achilles, the Bastet, putting Thor on SOT in game number 2 looked like night and day performance.
It really was, and everyone had their own pop-off game, whether it was a Roar, whether it was Scream, whether it was Solo or Troll, or Cyclone Spin. Everyone stepped up for them in this game. They had Venenu as that constant heartbeat for the team, always doing exactly what they needed. This is why Splyce look like world beaters all the time.
They really do, and you can tell how closely similar these teams are, not by the score or how that last game went, but how the mind games kind of went on throughout the set. I think Neil Ma versus Aurora was a very fun matchup to watch.
It certainly was. Which one of those supports came out on top was the thread to follow, and 3 times it was Aurora. That's why Splyce ended up winning that set. We still have the post-game interview and a little bit more breakdown coming for y'all in just a bit.
Skillshot, the official production partner of the SMITE Pro League.
Welcome back to the SPL end of Thursday. But what a Thursday it has been. We just got through. We've seen SK take on Splyce. And Splyce took 4 games to do it, but they do find the victory 3-1. Ryan, game 4 just happened. What went down?
It's really just Splyce controlling that early game yet again. It just felt like there was no chance for Sam DeSoccer to get a real momentum swing going in his favor because Scream was all up in his jungle all game long. The early first blood where they dive a tier 2 tower to make sure they get him. And he came over, got a kill over in the long lane, felt like it was starting to go their way a little bit. But even still, Cyclone manages to trade 1 for 1. It just never felt like SK got momentum in this game. Paul was neutralized very well. Really, the right side of the map played so well for Splyce.
Mid to right.
Solo and Scream, both a combined 12-0. You sprinkle Venenu in there, that's an easy 14-0 for these boys. I mean, they just played so well. Scream and Solo in particular.
I was speaking to some of the production staff tonight. Are we going 5 here? And I'm like, listen, if SK can get about 3 to 5k lead in the first 10 minutes, we might be going to game 5. But if Splyce can do exactly what they did in the game here and frustrate SK in the early stages, this could be the last game in this set, and Splyce stepped up when we expected them to.
That last pick of Willix just made it so that Paul couldn't really ever step up, couldn't be aggressive. Venenu's long-range damage was so consistent, and Belair just fell so far behind early because of that pressure onto the blue buffs and onto his side of the map.
And Horus for a Raw, something that he always knew he'd be good with. We don't see too much of him on the Horus because mainly he'll stick to the other gods, but definitely in the wheelhouse. Splyce, though, just really destroyed SK in this last game. It's kind of a tale of game 1 versus game 4, how dominant SK were in game 1. Splyce gave it them back in spades in this 4th one.
Impressive stuff. I mean, this is the Splyce that we expect to see, honestly. This is the team that is the defending world champions despite having a vastly different roster at this stage. They still all have experience. I mean, even the ones that weren't on this roster,
well, 4 players are world champs, right?
Of the 3, 2 of them are world champs, right, in the mid and jungle. So you know this team has a ton of competitive experience. The one guy who doesn't, Solo or Troll, has played super well. Looks like he's fitting in perfectly with this squad.
Well, speaking of them, you do have an interview. We do have an interview standing by with Splyce. It is going to be a Raw and Solo or Troll. Let's have a listen in.
Everybody on Jingwei.
I have Aurora and Solo or Troll here, support and solo laner for Splyce. And Solo or Troll, I want to come to you first, man, because that was such a big set here from you. You told me you were like a little bit nervous and everything going into it. Well, how did the set feel for you overall, and how did you feel about your performance?
I felt really good first game. Well, I went a little bit nervous because I think if we beat SK, we go to Worlds, and that's pretty crazy to me. And after the first game,
we're not going to Worlds yet.
After the first game, we lost, and I was kind of like a little shaky a little bit, but I still had confidence, and the set just felt good overall.
I feel like whenever I see you, Aurora versus Neilma, there's always a lot of mind games between you guys. I'm thinking back to the first game of the Hercules versus the Fenrir matchup, and then I'm looking back into the beginning of game number 4 when you guys were just boxing each other with pillows. What's it like to face Neilma?
He's pretty aggressive, but I feel like it's pretty easy to predict what he's going to play most of the time coming into the sets. The Fenrir was not really surprising at all. It did really well in the first game, but they had really good mid-pressure with it. But yeah, no, he's just a really aggressive player, and 2 aggressive players to watch is always fun in the support role.
And game 3, it was like that was like the longer game where you kind of got picked there in the jungle, and it looked like maybe SK were gonna be able to make a push, that they got that FG. What were comms like in that moment? Because they got the push, but then you guys like wiped them on your own Phoenix and counter pushed. What was the team comm like throughout that up and down of that whole sequence?
Yeah, so right there I made a really big mistake. Actually, the team played it really well. Scream called to just fight because they used ults on me. And Ven got a really good Nethal on Thoth, and then Scream blinked in and finished him off, and then we just chased him down. I don't know, Sam and Belair were pushing the right Phoenix, and I don't know how the Phoenix got onto Sam, but it started shooting him. I don't know if the wave didn't walk in all the way yet. Is that what happened?
Yeah, the wave wasn't there.
Oh, so it was like right there. So yeah, so when the wave walked in on him, we all knew just kill him, and then we could just run down mid and end the game.
What do you guys think was the defining moment of this set that you guys knew that you guys just had SK's number? Because that 4th game looked nothing like the previous 3.
Yeah, game 1, they had a really good strategy with Persephone mid, and then obviously the Fenrir and Humbot's combo just locking somebody down. They just used their mid pressure really well to kill the frontliners. Game 2, we banned it, and it went a lot better. But it was still a little shaky. And then Game 3 is the game against Thoth, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Game 3 is the game was against Thoth. That was a good game for us. It was a bad game, but it was a good game to learn from for us, which was good around sieging. But we played the sieges really poorly, so that's why that game got drawn out. And then Game 4 was the Solar Troll show.
Yeah, Game 2 was when I kind of knew the set was over. It was just like, yeah, I'm just riding the momentum and.
Yeah, no, it was a good win for both of you. Congratulations to the whole team. A huge win for you guys. Look forward to all your matches in the future. And we'll get it back over to the desk. They got a couple things to wrap up.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Finch. And week 9, halfway through week 9 in the SPL here. And this is how the standings look. Rivals still at the top, as you'd expect. Space Station still at the bottom. But the pack shuffling a little here or there.
Splyce with that win moves up to 9-5. That puts them at parity with Renegades and really, really close to that top end. Really only a game back of that top tier of the SPL right now. SK now sitting at 6-9. Not mathematically eliminated, I don't think, from making Worlds automatically, but between ye and you, chat, they're not going to Worlds automatically.
And as I said, we're only halfway through the week. Tomorrow, we've got 2 big games for you. Obey Alliance, who just beat Dignitas, now get another challenge in Renegades. Still after that, we'll also get to see SK once again with a tricky set there. Good day tomorrow as well.
Yeah, should be, especially if Obey is able to play as well as they did today. That being said, if they beat Renegades, man, I don't know. I don't know. We got to do something crazy if that's what happens.
Yeah, I'm kind of going to lose it if they do, because you just don't see those coming as casters. We've been around a long time, seen a lot of games.
Yep.
They're unusual, and we had a lot of fun casting them today. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in and watching along with the show. Hope you've all enjoyed yourselves. We'll be back again tomorrow, though, for the SPL at 11 a.m. Eastern. Is it still Eastern now? We're not in
Sure
Eastern
is.
summer or something, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
Eastern.
Eastern time. It's made up time. Real time is probably like 4 in the afternoon. There you go, just you all at home. And you Europeans, you're more important to me still. I know Brexit and stuff, but still, 5 for you guys. We'll see you all then later on. North Americans, see you later. Have a good night. What did we say now?
We peach it. Yeah, we peach it. Here we are. Peach.
What does peach mean?
That one.